and the politics involved and all the layers of grief and loss of like, how could this guy be gone? Like, we were just getting started. He gave himself a timeline. He was like, if I make it as a pro skier, I'm not doing this. Like, that's how this could have gone. I'm still a complete punk misfit. Like, I have not found my way. I haven't figured out what team sports I can play. And then enter into the 7th grade, and the cool guy walks past me with his Van Halen 1984 t-shirt on, and it's Glen Doherty. And Glen was the ringleader. So he was like the king of the nerds. His reliability led to, like, he always had a job. Like, he wanted to see what he was made of. And it was like enough to go down there and talk to the recruiter. I end up meeting Clint. I end up meeting Shane, Brandon Webb, yourself. Like, these guys that are all kind of well known in the community, but they were just Glen's teammates. We're going to live forever. So sure, you get all my debt. Yeah, no, you get all my debt. That's how he ran it, man. And then he died.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, and I would say especially, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He was Glen Doherty's best friend growing up. He was a roommate. He was the executor of his estate after the Benghazi happenings. He was a pro snowboarder. He's an advocate for the fallen through the augmentation and I would say advancements made to the Defense Base Act based on his hard work, as well as the law firm that helped him out with it. He's the creator of BUBS Naturals and co-founder of it, which has been created in Glen Doherty's honor. And from our standpoint here at Mic Drop, has been an absolute honor to be able to be the longest standing sponsor of our show by a lot. It's a continued sponsor. We'll continue to plug the product for as long as that product is in existence because of our tie-in with Glen. BUBS Naturals was founded in 2017, emerging from a series of events marked by the tragedy of losing his best friend Glen. The journey began with a morning coffee meeting between Sean and TJ, driven by a desire to make a difference, honor a legacy, and share some laughter along the way. The BUBS namesake honors Glen "Bub" Doherty, who heroically died in Benghazi, Libya in 2012. Beyond remembering Glen for his patriotism, the BUBS ethos celebrates the adventurous and passionate life that Glen led. The essence of BUBS Naturals is infused with the spirit of professional athletes, top performers, adventurers, and Navy SEALs. Their mission is to surpass your expectations in everything they do, beginning with their scientifically backed collagen and MCT oil powder. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage the former Abercrombie & Fitch model, Sean Lake.
Mike, thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you coming. We've been talking about doing this for, 5 fucking years probably, or at least several. And, it was kind of a challenge, I think, in trying to determine how to do it, how to kind of honor Glen's legacy and talk about his childhood growing up. And, we've kind of gone back and forth as to how best to achieve it. But at the end of the day, I think just getting you on the fucking couch and talking about, how he was growing up, your guys' friendship, and then ultimately you creating BUBS to honor his legacy and in a big way, the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. And I just can't thank you enough for carving the time out to come here and do it.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. It was kind of nerve-wracking for a while there. We talked about it for years, and I guarantee you, if we had done this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I wouldn't be ready to talk, I think, the way I'm ready to talk now.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I know we've talked about it before. It's like I still think of him all the fucking time, and not that it's any easier to deal with, but as time goes on, I think your ability to at least talk about it without fucking, shutting down and getting so emotional that you can't talk about it. I think you go through different phases, and I agree. Like, I think we're both at a place where we can and want to talk about it and actually get to a place where we can, promote his legacy in a way that, that truly honors him in the way that he deserves,
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go through kind of the typical, I guess, lightning round questions that I like to do with every guest, just because I find it fascinating. What's the last full book that you read?
Full book.
Like the last one
I can't do
finished.
the last 6 half books, right? Because it could add
Finished.
up to
The last one that you actually finished.
The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. I picked it up a year ago, and I'm usually a guy who likes to go with like really light book, heavy book, light book, heavy book, and this one was, I felt to be a really good blend, but it's a fucking phenomenal read. I highly recommend it to anyone out there, because you're basically going to take a look at society and yourself and be like, oh yeah, we're heading down the wrong path here.
Yeah.
Let's unwind that. And if there's one moral to the story, it's, hey, when you're walking around, carry your shit, don't roll it around, and take the stairs.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I just started reading a book, and I should know the title and the author. I don't. I think it's called Civilized to Death, and it's very similar to that. But it's fascinating. It talks about progress, not necessarily being progress, but it's, you know, it sounds like an oversimplification, and in a way it is. But as you kind of go backwards, civilization wise, it is pretty fascinating that we're at where we're at, you know. And not to take away from, you know, the advances that we have. A lot of them are extremely positive, but not all of them, you know.
Well, I mean, I'll give you a Comfort Crisis example. I flew into Dallas, right? I flew into Love Field, and there's an Uber pickup. Uber pickup's about a half mile away from the actual like terminal. So you don't really know that, and you go, oh, I got to go walk a half mile now. All right. I get excited about that. I'm like, cool, I get to work my legs. It's been 3 hours sitting on an airplane. And the amount of people complaining about weaving through them, and they're just kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to walk this far. And I'm just like, you have no idea how good you have it. Yeah. Because there's also a little walkway that's going to help, you know, like automate your steps along the way. But the whole point of the book is like, yeah, man, we've had all these amazing life-saving technological advances, but at the same time, we've completely softened ourselves up. Yeah. And hey, here's just some I'm going to shine a light on this, and I'm going to give you all the evidence to support it. And then he leaves it with the reader to be like, yeah, maybe I should take the stairs. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, simply put, take the fucking stairs. What's something that you wish that you were better at?
Patience.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're still impatient at 53? Is it because of your kids?
Yeah. It's just something to constantly work on. Like it is part of my daily routine to not jump shit. And I did it yesterday. Literally had to catch myself from talking like an asshole
to
my wife.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. And like she was like, we were talking about like logistics and travel, and like I was trying to plan something out, and like I just wanted to book the ticket, and she wasn't ready to, and she was holding off, and she had her reasons for it. And I'm just like, well, you know, like you just let me know when you're ready. And like I said it in that way with that just a shitty tone.
Patronizing.
And I'm not thinking that in my head, but hey man, the words came out the wrong way. So I had to rewind and be like, okay, I got to get better at this again still. And it's funny, I don't think of myself as 53. I think that would be probably the wrong road to go down. I'm in the same fucking headspace I was when I was 18. Yeah. It's just fine tuning that machine and like trying to like just evolve and figure shit out. So I always say like, hey, if I can work on this more and more, don't react to something, respond to it.
Have you always been impatient?
Yeah.
Okay. I was the most patient guy that anybody knew until I had kids. And after about 15 years of being a dad, it finally came full circle, and now I'm patient again. But for a solid 15-year period, maybe a little less, I was not that patient.
Put on your shoes. Eat your food.
Yeah, I mean,
eat your food.
Yeah.
Put on your shoes.
Go to bed. Shut the fuck up. Go to bed. Like, yeah, just what did we talk about? Painting the carpet. Like, didn't we talk? We talked about that. What?
It's so true.
Why are you putting Oreos in the gas tank?
Dude, I got a 6 and an 8-year-old. Yeah. I live it.
Yeah,
but
you're right in the thick of it.
It's something to work on. I think like, look, you're wired a certain way, and we're all wired a certain way. And so like that patience thing is just something to work on.
Are you saying being gay is not a choice? Is that what you're saying?
God, that's a whole biology thing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes,
it's okay. I'm unqualified to answer that question. I only see the
good news.
Good news, wife. Don't got to worry about that one. Green feather boas or not.
I fucked up your answer. I totally interrupted. Go ahead.
That's all right. Just work on it.
Yeah, that's one thing I could be better at. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
Completely selfishly, because I have definitely lived a selfish life. I would go back to Snowbird in the late 70s, and I would absolutely harvest all of that fresh snow. And if I really want to set myself up right, I'm going to make a couple choice investments in some select stocks and kind of be ahead of the game as a venture capitalist. So I probably only needed like $100 and I could turn it around. And then when I pop back into present day, we'll have that ski house ready.
Guys, real quick, I've recently launched Patreon for the all-inclusive mic drop experience. This goes above and beyond just ad-free. Yes, you are getting ad-free episodes, but you're getting before and after bonus footage of myself and the guest in studio, in many instances outside of the studio, doing jiu-jitsu, dog stuff, car, motorcycle, recovery, fitness, lifestyle, all kinds of different things. All the different things that I have going on are included in that Patreon page. We're releasing content multiple times a day, every single day. And I want to offer that to you guys. Just go to my Patreon page. The link is in every description or any platform that I'm on, and come enjoy that experience with me. That content is for you guys. It's what you want to see. It's about you. It's about what world you want to peek into in terms of all the different things that I have my hands in. And we're bringing that to you guys just for you. And I want to take one quick second to just say thank you to everybody who already has signed up. Without your support, we couldn't do what we do for you. So thank you to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in there. What are the two key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those two components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero. $100 in Bitcoin or Apple back in the day, and that's what's crazy. I mean, to me, especially Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know what $100 of Apple would have done at its inception. The same. Was it that low?
Yeah, but think when Bitcoins were $1 each in like the late early 2000s, right?
No, dude, they were fractions of a cent.
Yeah.
At its inception. In fact, I missed the boat on that one. Our good buddy Nick that we were talking about.
Yeah.
He told me about it when I was on the West Coast as a SEAL canine trainer. And this was in 2010. He was like, "Dude, you got to fucking buy into this Bitcoin." And he's like, "Just put $100 in." I was like, "No." It's like, that's dumb as fuck. It's like, I'm not even going to waste $100 on it. If I had done that when he told me to do it, it would have been worth like $83 million.
Yeah. I mean, you read the article about the British guy who like had his wallet, like, his digital wallet on a hard drive, cleaned up his house and threw it away. And it was like, $140 million in Bitcoin.
God, it's fucking.
And his initial investment was
like
a few $100.
Yeah. Fucking nuts.
Yeah. I went into it late. I dabbled. I bought a Bitcoin, but that was in like 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
And they were worth like $8,000 at the time.
You still have it?
Yeah.
No shit.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Well, I wrote it up, down, but I'm up.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. I mean, it's fucking 69 grand.
Well, it's like, look at, I'm no investment expert, but it's like, how much property do you have? How much you have in the stock market? Tangible goods, less tangible goods, truly intangible goods, venture capital. Like, do you invest in companies? And it's like, if you have this kind of blended mixed portfolio, then a cryptocurrency and a digital holding makes perfect sense. Like,
it's like
don't bet the farm on it.
Yeah.
Like, what, you do a great ad read for some company that does gold and silver, right? And it's like, I'm a huge proponent of having a small stake in that. And I got out of that for a while. And then I was like, you know what? Why not have like a physical holding? Just a sum of it. Like, have it in there. I don't think gold's going away anytime soon.
No, I mean, and to me, that's my willingness to have gold as a sponsor. I mean, really, with any of them that I read, it's stuff that I use or believe in or would or what have you. And to me, like I think for anybody, it's smart to have a certain amount of cash on hand. And to me, gold is that same thing. But if I have $10,000 in cash sitting in a safe, 5 years from now, if I have that same $10,000 in gold, it's going to be worth more than what I put into it for sure. You know, now it may not be double, but it's going to be more, you know, between inflation and our government printing fucking money and the national debt, like 100% that cash is not going to be worth 10 grand, you know, like, or it's going to be worth, you know, 10,000 US dollars, but that 10,000 in gold is for sure going to be worth more. But, you know, having said that, like, I don't think it's a good idea to like put all your fucking, you know, every dime you have in savings into gold either. You know, it's a hedge against inflation and a way to at least have something on hand that you're not losing fucking value with. But
well, yeah, it's like when the stock market is going like crazy, do you go heavy into bonds, or do you wait till like you were in a full bear market and then you have your bond side? Like balancing it all out makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's like, hey, I've got X amount of property. Like, what's the perfect ratio? I don't know, man. What's your tolerance for risk? Like, no, there's no guarantees out there. You just got to go with what you know. Like right now, I'm super lopsided in terms of like, hey, call it venture capital interest, because I've got BUBS and I want to grow that and I want to harvest that. And I want to make that the most important thing. But like, hey, there's property over here. Yeah, that's super important. I think going back to the crypto thing, like, absolutely have some in there. Yeah, it's not going away.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. It's one I got maybe, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, and it made no sense to me when I first read it. I mean, it made sense empirically, but and I can't recount it because it's actually like a long quote. It's the classic Teddy Roosevelt man in the arena. You know, it's not the critic who counts. It's not those pale, timid souls on the sidelines. It's the man in the arena who's actually bloodied and gets the shit kicked out of him and stands up again, like who dares to try and not live his life on the sidelines. And it was a Glenism. Glen got that quote from his dad way back when, like 90s, and passed it over to me ages ago. And I remember like at first like being like, oh yeah, cool quote. And then you really give it some thought. And I highly recommend it. It's like, you know, 10 sentences long, and it's just all about how you want to live your life. And I was like, what a cool thing. And he used it personally. He's like, dude, I would pull this out like whenever I started getting those dark thoughts and I was just, you know, feeling down. He's like, I just would flip it out of my wallet and read it. And he had a, you know, hard copy of it. I carry it on my iPhone because, you know, modern.
You know, what's kind of depressing about that quote is that it's still true today, but I almost feel like it's kind of less true because of the power that social media has, and the fact that when that quote was written, there were actual critics, right? There were people that that, you know, were in the news that like that was their job, was to criticize people, but that's really the only people that kind of had a voice. Not that I don't think everybody should have a voice, but there's a downside to that, in that you see it when like the social pressure that now exists, when somebody says one fucking thing that enough people don't like to where they'll bombard their fucking social media profiles. And to me, because that's kind of the reality, is that like we all have this like digital profile now, you know, it's like everybody has their own newspaper, you know? But now everybody also has the ability to write an editorial in that fucking newspaper with their comments, you know? And so while yes, it isn't the critic that counts, the critic counts way fucking more nowadays than it used to, because everybody has allowed it to.
Yeah, dude, I could go on and on about this one, but that moment, like remember the purity of Instagram? Like the idea, like you posted a photo and it was just the photo and you were capturing a moment, a snapshot moment. And then you look at what the platform has evolved to over 14 plus years. And now it's like, it's social commentary, and those critics are fucking ruthless. And I mean,
and they can ruin you, you know, I mean, really, I mean, well, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, like they can make you lose your job. They can make you lose your business. I mean, like it's fucking wild.
It is. I mean, it depends what you, like, what do you want to do with it? Like you want to take those moments and double down. Are there learnable moments in there, like teachable moments of like, oh, maybe I said something fucked up and like I never thought of it that way. Like I'll take the open conversation, but the unabashed, anonymous, fucking keyboard cowboy bullshit is to me, cowardice.
Yeah.
And it's those critics on the sidelines that aren't willing to put themselves in there and take a shot at something. At the same time, if you use social media and you post yourself out there, you're putting your chin out there. But that's what Roosevelt did. Yeah. Roosevelt took action on matters that he felt were super important, on topics that were unpopular, to future-proof, nature, conservancy, his, view of the standards of human athletics. Like, you look back at his presidency and he was a hard motherfucker. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't a popular stance in a lot of ways, but guess what? He was president, and he could see a future where he was trying to protect our society. And like, that doesn't happen without people taking shots at you. Today it's post a cute photo and someone's just going to fucking come after you, or like post a reel and have an opinion and someone's going to give you 50 different opinions, and like, good luck, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I guess to me, the frustrating part is how, just about everything can get hijacked, especially right now. It's like somebody will post, anything that has nothing to do with Israel or Gaza or anything. And there'll be, 1,000 free Palestine, and it's just like, what the fuck is happening? Although.
Well, you mean the vegans of political activism?
Yeah, no shit. Yeah. However,
I'd like to apologize to all my vegan friends.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
There's at least one.
I've got my brother and his wife are vegan. I love them to death. I like busting their chops, but
God, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, they're fucking amazing people. But, I just like to, send them steaks for Christmas, and that way their dogs get fed well.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when you show up, you can just go in the freezer.
Throw that in the freezer. And yeah. On that, the whole canceling thing, the one kind of glimmer of hope that I do have is seeing how somebody like Andrew Huberman dealt with his, if you want to call it a scandal, whatever, which I don't even get what the fucking uproar is. But like the fact that he had kind of that same thing at first, like all these people, like, no matter what he said, it was like, well, how does that tie into banging 6 different chicks, nationwide, and they don't know about it, like just all this people just trying to fucking mess with him. And he never fucking said a word about it. And it just kind of went away. It's like nobody's fucking talking about it anymore.
I don't think people want, his morality, how he like lives his life, it's a tough one, right? Because like he is a public figure, and he put himself out there as literally the gospel leader of healthy living, healthy choices. And he does it in an incredibly eye-opening way. So I think someone in their mind wrapped it up and decided, well, he should be an upstanding citizen. Like, if he's going to teach me about the dangers of smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol and good sleep patterns and all of these things, and he must just live the most pure life. And it's like, no, man, he's out there banging 15 different chicks and like choking them out or having them choke him out or whatever the fuck he's into. And because he's in this elevated position, no different than a politician, Gary Hart back in the 80s going on a little mini cruise with not his wife. And then people want that outrage.
Yeah.
And, in public relations, there's a couple of different solutions you can have, right? It's like, okay, get right in front of it and talk about it and like make it a big topic. Or in his case, he's like, what I do when the lights are off is my fucking business, and just shut up about it. And it's interesting because there was an immediate wave of backlash. I remember being on social media. I'm like, God, what'd this guy do?
Yeah.
I figured he killed someone.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a creep. That's subjective, right?
Even now, like he's a fucking player.
Yeah.
Like,
thank you.
I wouldn't even say it's.
Yeah.
I didn't read enough to even know like what the accusations are past. He had like 6 different fucking serious girlfriends that didn't know about each other, but again, it's like.
There are movies about that too.
Well, here's my biggest heartburn with it, and then we can move on and not make the whole episode about him or that type of stuff. But it's like the fact that you still don't have a fucking name off the Epstein list that's in jail. Like, I don't want to hear it. It's like if you're going to make that big of a fucking stink about a dude who's having consensual relationships with adult women.
Yeah.
Maybe you disagree with how he went about it, but whatever. But these motherfuckers like took children to an island and fucking raped them. And where are your comments and outrage on that?
Yeah. Oh, they're there too, but that was 2 years ago, so that's not relevant anymore.
They're really not though. I mean, it's like if you're going to bombard somebody's social media with whether it's the Huberman stuff, Free Palestine, whatever, like why not make it about that? Like, to me, if there's something that's outrage worthy or comment bomb worthy, like I don't know what would top that,
But yeah, well, actually, let me hold on a second. I got to check my calendar of outrage. I'm all Palestine right now. I'm all Palestine.
Next month.
Hold on.
Well, it is Pride Month, so
sexual deviancy. Wait, there. Yeah, I can pick a moral outrage on that one. Like, look in the mirror, people. Come on.
Yeah, it's just fucking stupid, but whatever.
Agreed.
Do you have an EDC? Like, what do you carry on you? I know you don't carry a gun.
I don't carry a gun. I own a gun. I own a Glock. Because I'm too stupid to have one that I have to like maintain and clean and do all the things. So I like the one that I can keep in my attic or somewhere totally inconvenient where it's super handy. And ask that hold on a second, I should have a sawed off 12 gauge under the bed that can just spray and pray. And you'd think after doing all the house clearing exercises with Cirillo and all of his little camps that I would actually have the proper weaponry. But no, I got a Glock and I keep it in the attic because I got a 6 and an 8-year-old.
Is it really in the attic?
Right now it is.
Jesus.
Well, that's on me.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the fingerprint lock thing to keep it under the bed that I haven't gotten yet because it's so easy it's so accessible.
Yeah.
I'm like, until I deal with that, but it's like on my chore list of things, I've kept it low. So things I keep in my, around me for protection, I just keep a beat stick, like, good, long,
fucking baseball bat.
It's actually not even a baseball bat. I did this like thick
like
2-inch dowel.
Oh, all right.
No, it was dowels. I got them to protect all the windows. So I chopped them up so you can open a window, but not enough so someone can get through, but you create good airflow. And I had enough of it. I'm like, cool, I'm going to keep one in my truck. I'm going to keep one here. But everyday carry for me is a knife. A little 2.5-inch folder. I used to run Cold Steel all the time, and I flipped over to the full-blown hipster snowboard brand called James Brand. And got their knives sucked for so long. But I really like the guys that run it, and they just do the like super clean designs, and they finally figured out production in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 10 years of bad knives, and then they finally they turned a corner, and the company comes from snowboarding, comes from action sports, and now they just do a phenomenal like little serrated blade with a sharp pinpoint. And had I flown here with a suitcase or bigger duffel, I'd have it on me. Yeah. But those are easy. I use them a lot to open packages.
Dull them up.
Yeah, just dull the fuck out of them. And but that's my everyday carry. Yeah, I'm a big fan of having some piece of utility. When I snowboard, like I don't get to snowboard like I used to, but I used to always carry a Leatherman on me, just multi-tool, be ready to go. Yeah. And I've always just kind of had those things around.
I'm going to skip right into the snowboard stuff for one question. Have you ever gotten into a fight on the slopes?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school. So this is like 1988, 89. And snowboarding was barely allowed. And I remember me and some friends going to Wachusett, like this little bumfuck ski hill. My buddy Tony Frickland, my buddy Mike Jordan, not the Mike Jordan, the other Mike Jordan. Yeah. And
slightly less popular.
And we're walking up there, and this is like, we're snowboarders, right? I'm in the height of my full-blown teenage rebellion years, and I'm wearing like blue jeans, fucking neon hat, fucking horrible sweatshirt that says Vision Streetwear all over it. And these skiers just fully called us out. Like, fucking snowboard, like, whatever trolling comment. And I remember there was that like power of 3.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, man.
It's like an 80s movie.
And it was like fucking Hot Dog the movie, except we were the snowboarders. We were the outcasts. And like, we're talking like we're the 3 snowboarders, and then there's, 1,000 skiers on the hill. It's not like it was 50-50 like it is today. And that tension, like, it got right into each other's noses. And like, I'm not saying, I don't think ski patrol was involved. It didn't turn into actual fisticuffs, but it was like that one step away from it. And I had a few of those instances over time, because the rivalry between skiing and snowboarding, really up until probably, I don't know, say 10 years ago, it wasn't any mutual respect back then. It was like we were fucking interlopers. We were invaders. We were changing their pure culture and turning it on its head. And I fucking relished in it.
So, I mean, I don't know shit about either. I've snowboarded once. I tried skiing once as a child and was terrible and never tried it again. But is it because you're taking like the Cape Cod money skier refined fucking type of brand or whatever, and now you're throwing like skateboard punks into the mix, and that's the heartburn with it?
Yeah, I think the heartburn was it wasn't, it didn't have class.
Yeah.
It was very street. It was born from skateboarding. It was, that which was a huge counterculture sport, and it just ruffled everyone's feathers because they didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. Now, we were all out to enjoy the mountains. We were all there to have a great time, like turning in powder, jumping in the air, like fucking whatever you wanted to do.
It would be equivalent of like a bunch of skateboarders showing up at the Masters wearing fucked up clothes and wanting to play golf and like just throwing that turd in the punch bowl.
Yep.
And that's kind of the culture mix.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. And I mean, like, look at, everyone has to be on the hill. You have to make your way down the hill. But it was like the skiers had all these arguments about like why snowboarders shouldn't be allowed, because like they turn one way, they can't see the other way. Yeah. And so you're skiing down a hill, you can't see behind you, fuckface. Like what,
When you take a step back and you think about the ridiculousness of all of that, it's pretty laughable. Do you have a morning routine, a specific one?
Hey, absolutely. So I get up every morning a little before 6 a.m., just kind of like with the light or whatever. It's like clockwork. Like I don't even have a choice in the matter. I meditate every morning. So talk about the patience thing. Like it's a really good deposit on just getting your day set. I have a very active meditation style. So like I keep my eyes open. I'm focused on a specific area that you're sort of consciously trying to bat out any of the day's thoughts that are bound to creep in and kind of like kickstart your day. I drink a warm glass of lemon water with a little sprinkle of Himalayan salt in it. So you kind of like getting those electrolyte charge from the night before, pH balance from, warm lemon water. Make your bed. I'm a huge fan of it. I made the bed, just so you know.
Oh, all right. Appreciate it.
And that's like,
I won't wash the sheets now then. Just like the last 9 people that stayed.
I was going to say, I kind of saw that, but I didn't want to call you out there. I just figured I'd sleep on the other side of the bed where the stain wasn't.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I tried to run water over it, but that didn't work too well either.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So that morning routine is like, get a couple of hits under your belt, right? And then I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, and they're up anytime from right at 6 a.m. to 7:15. Like you never know. So I get those first few things done. Got a garage gym set up, a little rower, Peloton, dumbbells, pull-up bar, and I'm a big fan of CrossFit modalities. So you can go out there and just crank out something for 30, 45 minutes, and it's all done before 7 a.m. And then, the coffee's brewing. I have this little brand I'm hugely fond of called BUBS Naturals, and
I've never heard of it.
It really, man, we got to change your ways. It's a game changer.
Little mom and pop.
Yeah. Little thing. So I make a cup of coffee every morning, and I load that up with all my functional ingredients, my collagen and my MCTs, and I just get going. So I try to stay off the phone and do the digital thing until around 7. And then that's it. Kids are up. It's on. Time with them. Get them off to school. I'm in front of the computer or wherever I need to go to just a little bit before 9 a.m. Chances are, I've at least during that time from 6 to 9, at least 3 days a week, there's going to be a meeting or something in there that will fuck up that flow. So then my morning workout is the thing that gets kicked out to the afternoon. But like I said, I'm a huge fan of get that warm lemon water, make your bed, meditate, do those little things for yourself so that you kind of got a couple chips stacked for the day, because you don't know where the fucking day is going to go. So
that's the fucking truth. I'm right there with you. With that, do you adhere to that no matter where you go? For the most part, today's a great example. Lemon water had to give because I was at your house and it didn't occur to me to travel with a lemon, or hit the store or anything. So that one gave, but then the meditation hits and just have a warm glass of water instead. What can you do to hack around it?
Normally I would just do whatever, like go out into the garage or, like do some fitness stuff. But I thought, hey, if I'm going to join you maybe this afternoon, I'll deviate from that. So I'm always have a little flexibility, but get up, meditate, like those first few things, make the bed, like those are immovable. It doesn't matter where I am, do those things and have a little bit of flexibility because look, I'm going to train today. I just don't know what it's going to look like or when yet.
Yeah. I love it. You're from Boston, ish. Are you from Winchester?
No.
Also? No.
No. So Glenn was born and raised in Winchester. Like he was born in Winchester Hospital. I was born at a regional hospital known as Addison Gilbert Hospital in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
All right. So before we go any further, all right, Worcester. It's not pronounced that way, right?
Oh, you mean Worcester?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the town that you just mentioned that you're from?
Oh, Gloucester.
Okay, so why isn't Winchester Winster?
Well, you see, the real fancy, proper set of folks there.
Is there? Why? I mean, am I fucking retarded? What?
Well, yeah.
But.
So look at Massachusetts and little colloquialisms of speech and little different nuances. Like, technically, it should be Gloucester, and it's Gloucester. And I don't know, maybe it's abbreviation, make it a little bit easier on yourself. But Winchester didn't have a lot of loopholes to just be like, Winchester. It's still Winchester.
Like it's hard to be lazy with it.
It's just you're throwing just the right combos. But Gloucester, you can get rid of the Gloucester and just turn it into 2 syllables easy.
Yeah. See, I mean, to me, like it's all the same. Like I don't see the difference.
No.
But
it's a very, very smart, advanced culture out of Massachusetts.
I've heard that. I don't agree, but I have heard that.
Yeah, well, listen, it's out there.
Yeah.
They put it on social media. Let's let the people battle it out for us.
I do love Boston. Of all of the cities I've ever been to, it's actually my favorite fucking city I've ever been to, man. I really, really like that place. And I hadn't been there other than going to Glenn's funeral, which I spent zero time other than, just kind of adhering to that and, didn't experience the city otherwise and wouldn't have wanted to, frankly, under those circumstances. But over the last few years, I've been a few times and, man, there's something about like I don't know, it kind of reminds me of Texas in terms of the pride that exists for where you're from.
Yes.
But it's so concentrated into a city and there's so much history there. And there's just this weird mix of like, there's an energy that's kind of hard to really wrap my arms around. But like you just feel that the people give a shit and they're proud, but not obnoxious about it. Like maybe that's some of it too. I mean, I love Texas, but sometimes it's so over the top that it's almost like you're getting your face rubbed in it. Whereas with Boston, there's like this like happy medium to it. I don't know, but
well, we're secure in our in our patriotism.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess I'm curious. Like growing up, was there a sense of that growing up, or was it something that you had to leave and come back to realize that it was that way?
No, when you're in it, you're just in it. And so I was born in Gloucester, and it's this really interesting mashup town, which is. It's part blue collar fishermen. It's a full fishing town, like Gorton's of Gloucester, the fish sticks. Like that's literally in the heart of Gloucester. My dad worked in the fishing industry, and the other part of it's all artists. Like it's like a hippie little art enclave. So it's like people out, painting the lobster buoys.
That is such a weird mix.
It's a weird mix, but that was in the 70s, when I lived there. But in Massachusetts overall, there was this like diehard sports culture, like the things that we believe in, and everyone in. Not unlike Texas, really, because you guys have horrible winters. You suffer greatly during the winters. Like it is hard. You help your neighbors. You do things in the community together because everyone kind of rallies together. So that whole hashtag Boston Strong after the bombings, you don't need a hashtag for that. That's just how people lived. So everyone was really protective of each other and cares a great deal for each other. That was ingrained culturally. You help others out. That's just it. It's an fucking absolutely immovable.
Because you have to.
You have to. And you need them for you. Like you may not, but God forbid that day comes and you don't have anyone because you weren't that person. So that was in the culture. And there was great pride that comes from that. And then you do have this rich sense of history. Like, hey man, we were the original rebels. Like, we threw the Boston Tea Party. You know, we had the Paul Revere House. Like, we fought the Brits. We stood up for what's right. And it wasn't like us and, you know, hey, Texas didn't do that or California didn't do that. It was just, that's just what we did.
Yeah.
And then these institutions of higher learning that you can take great pride in, like Harvard University, you know, MIT, you've got phenomenal schools born from there. So there was definitely that, like, that pride of like where you came from. And it was, I would say, born from those hard ass, long, fucked up winters.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I think Texas has a great deal of that. And it's one of the reasons I love coming to Texas is there's a warmth, energy, and pride. Yeah. And yeah, it's over the top. And like, it's very much subtle in New England. Like that's that kind of like, you know, white collar, I don't know. It can almost come across as snobbish, but it's definitely not, but it's protective. And like, they're not super warm letting the outsiders in. Like, I can roll through Texas. As long as I don't say I'm from California, I get a pretty warm reception. You go to New England and it's a little bit more gruff. It's a little bit more like, you're not from here. But then you kind of earn your way in and you get a feel for it.
Yeah. It's like a milder version in terms of the welcoming committee. It's like a milder version of New York.
Yes. New York's got it. They got it down packed.
Yeah. I
They're
mean,
just, you know, zero fucks.
Yeah. Was your first job a janitor at MIT? Is that what happened?
I like them apples. Huh?
While we're on that, like when you saw that movie, you're in the early 20s when that movie came
Early
out?
20s. Yeah, I absolutely loved that movie because it was like, holy shit.
Pretty spot on.
That dude's from fucking Southie. And the Southie guys are wicked tough. And I'm from fucking Cape Ann. So, you know, and I mean, I was raised full middle class. You know, like Glenn was raised middle class. I was raised middle class. Winchester's one of the nicer towns in Massachusetts. Like, it's definitely like, there's no real slum in Winchester. But Good Will Hunting, I was like, holy shit, they nailed it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like, dude, we used to go to that bar, the Broken Arrow, like where they're shooting scenes in there. Like, that was our like fake ID go-to bar in Harvard Square.
Oh, no shit.
Oh, so it was like, oh my God, there's the Baskin Robbins, like right next door to it. And you're reliving that history. It was great.
Yeah. So when and how did you meet Glenn?
So I met Glenn in junior high school, and I remember being like scared shitless of him. And let me paint the picture a little bit. So my parents got divorced when I was 9 years old. My dad, he drank too much. He womanized. He was an alcoholic, and I'm really grateful to say that he completely sobered up, changed his life, and became an absolute stud of a human. And he was always a stud of a human, but he had these weaknesses. And my mom was an absolute hardcore, powerful woman who was born and raised her early childhood in Budapest, Hungary.
Oh, wow.
So like, she learned English as a second language. My grandfather, my Appa, was a colonel in the Hungarian armed forces, and he led a division of tanks. So after World War II, my family, my mom's side of the family, was very affluent in Budapest, Hungary. And then when the Russians rolled in, you know, the old Iron Curtain expansion, my family was immediately imprisoned and put into a concentration camp in the early 1950s. So my mom's, 8, 9 years old.
Oh, shit.
So she has this incredible journey, which really forged her adult life, escaping middle of the night out of the concentration camp, up through Germany, out to London, over to the east coast of Canada, and eventually settles in Kitimat, British Columbia, where there was this kind of expat Hungarian pipeline to just get people out of the country because of their political dissidence. In this case, being Hungarian but not Russian. So she learned English as a second language, got a full ride scholarship to Queen's University, met my dad there. The Queen's University is outside Ottawa or something. And my dad's was born and raised in Newfoundland. So St. John's, Newfoundland, which is on the farthest east coast side of Canada. And he grew up as a fisherman in the fishing industry, went to university, and then decided to start his own fishing company with my grandfather, and everything started in Gloucester. So my dad and my mom met, married, moved to Gloucester. So that was I was born there as they started their family, and a lot of my dad's side of the family had all settled in around Massachusetts, and a few of them worked in the fishing industry, which was pretty cool to be around as a kid.
Yeah.
You learn how to fish as a young kid. And I mean, we're talking, these were early on, when he was a kid, he was a deck mate on a schooner. Like we're talking sailboats here, not like fucking power trawlers like they have today.
Yeah.
And then he got into the fish import business and catching and just distributing it. So that was my whole childhood was like, oh, my dad's white collar, but in a blue collar industry. And my mom was this hardcore Hungarian economist who, raised us kids tough. And so we go to Winchester at 9 because she pulled up stakes. She's like, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. He went to rehab, cleaned up his life, thank God, like I said. And that's it. I moved to Winchester and I'm like this lonely 4th grader with an alcoholic dad. And I'm in some sort of like kids Al-Anon therapy to deal with like alcohol abuse, which I don't even understand. And all I remember from that is like you get these foam sticks and you can whack the shit out of your brother with them because you need to vent your anger. And that was about the coolest thing I took away from that. And then enter into the 7th grade and the cool guy walks past me with his Van Halen 1984 t-shirt on and it's Glen fucking Doherty.
So he was cool even back then? Like in junior high?
Listen, when it comes to fashion, that was probably the only time he was cool because I was stuck in Toughskins and he graduated to Levi's. Yeah. And you look at him and it's like, oh, and so like we didn't really hang out then. It took till high school when we really kicked things into gear. And Glen was technically my brother's best friend. So I have an older brother, Guy. Guy's a grade ahead of me. And Guy and Glen kind of fell into this group of friends. They're really like the misfits of Winchester High School.
Fucking
so
Lost Boys.
We're talking like one step off the Lost Boys. Yeah. They were a little nerdier than the Lost Boys. Yeah. And this is a group of friends. It was like Phil Savan, Robin Richardson, Chad Haskell, like names that don't mean anything to your crew, but they mean the world to me. Charlie Shannon.
Oh, I met Chuck.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you gotta understand, like we've been running around since like the 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. And I was the little brother. I was the tag along. So Glen would be throwing the house party and I would need my brother's permission to go and hang out there. Well, a year of this goes by and then I kind of become everyone's designated driver. Because like they want to get all fucked up and I want to go hang out with everyone.
Yeah.
So I get like, here are the keys. And I'm like, cool, I can go hang out. And like, I'm still a complete fucking punk misfit. Like I have not found my way. I haven't figured out what team sports I can play or not play. Like I'm just figuring all that shit out. And these guys were in the same boat, except they were just a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
And Glen was the ringleader. So he was like the king of the nerds. I will out that right now on the show that like he wasn't in the popular crowd. He was in the alternate popular crowd. Yeah. We were playing hacky sack in the common. Yeah. And Glen was on the wrestling team. I ended up being on the swim team. And every weekend we'd get together and it was like, what are we listening to? Yeah. And it was like, oh, there's this new album by the Smiths. Oh, we're going to play that. The Cocteau Twins, like alt rock 80s, REM. And that was their jam. And I just kind of fell in line with that. And then I brought the kind of edgy hardcore metal side in because I always just like things just to be a little bit more raunchy and, wrong. And then, and he was the ringleader of that crew, kind of the king of the nerds. But he had this thing in his personality. Like, why was he the king of the nerds? Because he just fucking could tell a joke a little bit better than the next guy. He just had that little spark. Yeah. And we weren't in his shadow. We flipped him a ton of shit. We were all really equals, but he was just the rallying point.
Yeah. What did you guys do outside of listening to music and whatever? I mean, I can only imagine the fucking shenanigans that, like, just getting in trouble as an example. Like, did you guys get into a lot of trouble?
Yes. Well, get caught or cause trouble. There's a blend there. So probably the most notorious prank that was done in high school. I actually was technically not a part of it. Hands in the air here. Till someone outs me on fucking social media or whatever. But Glen, Robin, my brother, decided one day that they were going to lock everyone into the school. And
lock them
into the school.
Oh, that's safe.
Yeah.
Fucking fire
There was
codes.
no real concern about the fire codes back then. They just thought it'd be like the funny senior prank to like chain lock all of the doors and
throw a Molotov cocktail.
And they did. Without the idea of like pulling the fire alarm and fucking everyone up. Yeah. Just like, haha, kick it out. Haha, go to the next door. And yeah, that caused a major stink in the school. That was a fucking horrible one. That was probably a peak moment of getting into trouble. Other than that, it'd be like just the shenanigans you could do leaving school. So like Glen's older brother, Greg, had a fucking Monza. Remember those cars,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Monza?
Yeah.
And we would have these contests every once in a while to see how many people you could fit inside the Monza.
Oh, no shit.
And be like, you could stack, if you really played your cards right, you could get like 11 people in a Monza.
Fucking clown car.
Full clown car. And like, Greg's up in the steering wheel trying to drive it like this. And we're laid down, like we're like laying flat. So like, hey, Lake, you want on this one? No problem. Bottom row.
Yeah.
Just fucking curl in the corner. They're all fetal position. And then someone, 5 people on top of you. And then you're driving down the road just trying not to get caught.
Yeah. Did you guys ever do the Ferris Bueller skip school and go watch the Red Sox play? Did that ever happen?
Yeah. Caught some Red Sox games, at least one that I was a part of. There was the leaving school part was actually funny. What we would do more would be go skiing.
Oh, yeah.
And snowboarding. Like Glenn and I, when I was a junior and he was a senior, that was really when we started our own adventures. And there's a dynamic that we kind of analyze on like why. Like technically Glenn was my brother's best friend. Glenn is a middle child, older brother, younger sister, same age gap. I'm a middle child, older brother, younger sister. And somewhere in there we kind of realized like, oh, what is the qualities of this middle child? Like, oh, you're a people pleaser. You're always the black sheep. Like you're the one getting in trouble. And that was Glenn and me. Like I'm the one who got caught shooting fireworks off in the fucking middle of the woods as a major fire hazard. Like that's my job. I'm learning how to make Molotov cocktails in the 9th grade because I think it'd be really funny to throw them in the fucking cemetery. Because like I have zero regard for like
anything,
anything. Like literally, like the self-awareness was completely missing. And then you get in trouble, and it's like shines a light on that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I guess that was bad. Okay, so he had his moments of that, and we really gravitated towards that. But our idea of playing hooky would be like, all right, I'm gonna hide my skateboard or my snowboard under the porch. And then I'm going to get up and go to school. But we're not really going to school. We're going to Waterville Valley, and we're going to go, snowboard, ski for the day.
Oh, shit.
There was shit like that. But the Sox games, absolutely. I remember we stole like 2 cases of beer off the back of a beer truck once at like 10 o'clock in the morning. Because no one's suspecting that you want to get that fucked up at 10 a.m. I mean, actually, we're in Texas. That could happen.
Yeah.
But
well, fuck. I mean, Boston. Like,
fair.
There's no shortage of fucking alkies there, right?
No. No, and we were just, teenage kids, but like, it was like just dumb shit crimes. In all fairness, like the Fireball Molotov cocktail, that's fucking, you're going to juvenile detention for that. You steal a couple cases of beer.
You guys actually threw Molotovs in a cemetery?
Yeah.
And you got caught?
No, did not get caught. These are the not get caught moments. Like this is if you do get caught.
I got you.
I got caught later making one.
A Molotov?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, why would you do that? What are you doing? And it was me and this kid, Craig. And, Craig was definitely like on a, dark path. And I was right there to hop on with him because I was completely not self-aware at the time.
Yeah.
Glenn always knew the difference of right and wrong. And there's another part of this that's really important from those early years. Like Glenn was fucking reliable. And I mean, reliable from day one. Like you're going to go somewhere, you're going to go do something, you're doing it. We didn't have cell phones. You weren't paging each other. This was like fucking dial-up rotary phones. You're making plans. You go and do the thing. And his reliability led to like, he always had a job. We all always had jobs. I was very New England also. Like you didn't just fucking loiter. You always had to be doing something. You played your sports or you were in an after school extracurricular activity and you worked. And that work ethic was ingrained in us, whatever that, shape it took. And he was always central in all that.
What jobs did he have growing up?
So his first job, actually, I don't know what his first job was working at the Candy Castle, his mom's candy shop in Lexington, Massachusetts. But that wasn't the best job that he had. I want to talk about the best job that he had with Robin and my brother Guy. I think Brian Romer was in on a couple other guys from high school. They decided, Glenn painted one summer. I think he was like 16 years old and he figured out painting houses. After one summer, he decided he's going to be an entrepreneur. And he and Robin and my brother decided to start a painting company. And there was a brief Grateful Dead phase going on during this time. And so they named their painting company Terrapin Painters. Now, if there is ever a name for a company that you don't want to hire.
What the fuck?
I mean, seriously, like they fucking thought the idea was phenomenal. Like, oh yeah, we're Terrapin Painters. And I'm like, but turtles are slow. Yeah. Who the fuck wants their house painted at half speed?
Did it last?
Nope.
No, it didn't.
No, but they scored like 2 jobs.
Yeah.
But that's like thousands of dollars. They grossly underbid them because they had no idea what their hourly rate was. They didn't know how to do contractor write-ups or anything. But no, Glenn worked at the candy shop for his mom. He worked, the painting job was like one of the more consistent ones. And we used to laugh about it, say we were born to paint because like we all got into it. Like I worked for college pro painters. Like being a house painter in New England was like, you're up on a ladder, you're jamming to Van Halen, you're fucking, you're on the 3rd story and you're painting out the trim. And it was a great existence.
Yeah, that's wild. All right. So sports wise, you swam, he wrestled. Did you guys, ever do anything together sports wise? Like, did you play sandlot baseball kind of shit? I mean, was there any of that?
Yeah. So soccer was like the sport of Winchester.
Really?
Like the fucking national sport of Winchester was soccer. The girls soccer team, the high school girls soccer team was absolutely fucking on fire. We're talking like state champions, best of the best. And the men's soccer, like the boys soccer team, likewise. So I played soccer, Glenn played soccer. We all played soccer as kids. And then eventually you hit 7th grade, 8th grade, and you realize like you're not going to make it to the varsity level or even the freshman level. Yeah. So you kind of peel out, but you have to do something. So I found individual sports because I just struggled in that team dynamic. So about the time Glenn and I were becoming friends, I ran track and I joined the swim team. And those were my things. I tried freshman football and I just got fucking clobbered day one, like fucking made fun of. And I was just like, all right, so skateboards look a lot more entertaining than you fucking guys. And I was in the wrong headspace. I mean, like parents divorced, still trying to figure out who you are. Like all those things are rattling around in my head. Glenn, his old man was a Golden Glove boxing champion. So Ben Doherty was like just a hard-nosed Irish second gen man who just brought all the toughness into the world. Like we were all scared shitless of Mr. Doherty. Like Mr. D was, an intense individual, and he brought boxing into Glenn's life. Yeah, which led to wrestling. But as a crew, and this is kind of a funny little aside, we would play soccer in like pickup games once in a while, and I remember somewhere in there was this move of like, here we are, the king of the nerds, like the nerd crew, but we were friends with the girls on the girls soccer team. And Glenn and Robin and a couple of the other guys challenged the girls to a soccer match, the varsity girls soccer match. And we're like, we are going to beat the girls. Like we're good enough to beat the state champs as guys.
How'd that go? You guys got your ass handed to you?
We did not get our asses handed to us. It was fucking neck and neck.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that tell you about women's sports, Sean?
They're better than we give them credit for.
Is that right? Is that what we take away from that? It's not a knock on women's sports, but let's be honest.
Maybe it's a knock on our athletic prowess as 15-year-old boys trying to, make a good impression.
I mean, but you guys didn't play soccer, right?
No.
Yeah, and they were the state champion.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about that for a second.
No, I know. I'm
just trying to avoid it.
Yeah,
Trying to tiptoe around it.
I'm just dancing around that one. So,
I got a
what's
wife.
funny is that I believe we won, and we never let them, forget about it. Like we just like, we fucking got you. I remember like Phil Savannah and like these guys that were, everyone was athletic in their own way. But just like think about that, like assembling your motley crew of hacky sack playing bros and challenging the girls, and like they all showed up, like they brought their A game. Yeah. And now hopefully one of them corrects me. It's like, no, we actually fucking won that game.
The fact that it was that close, though, I mean, we won't get into it, I guess. But
no, we don't need to look at it. I didn't say they were. No one had an Adam's apple either on their team. Okay,
are you sure about that?
Yeah,
Have you checked?
Well, we tried to check them all. That was the whole point.
That was the whole point. So you mentioned Glenn's dad. I remember hearing on a number of occasions he would talk about his dad and kind of that similar thing. Did you ever have any actual like run-ins with his dad where his dad like fucking tuned you up, or were you guys all just too scared? He
never hit us because we knew to tiptoe around him. Honestly, I was more scared of Mrs. Doherty, Barbara Doherty. Glenn's mom ran the house. And Glenn's parents got a divorce like when Glenn was like going into his senior year of high school, and his parents were battling it out and brawling and, again, booze and all the shit involved in it. But we just knew to steer clear of them.
Yeah.
And with Mrs. Doherty, it was just about what chores you do. You just walk into the house and you just wait for her to tell you what to do. Like, you're in her house, you're going to eat her food.
Oh, man.
But she's going to give you, like, go rake the leaves.
Yeah. How times have changed, huh? Like, can you imagine that happening nowadays? Like, it just doesn't happen. Or would it still happen in Boston, you think?
I think versions of it still happen in Boston. Yeah. I think the idea of being scared of someone's parents is a healthy thing.
Yeah.
And I'm all about it. Like, a little bit of fear and respect, yeah. I think at an early age helps set the stage. I mean, like, look at little rules that you set up. You know, like, they're not bad things. Like, what's the worst thing that happens? You respect the space of another.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm all for it. I guess I'm just thinking, you know, my kids are basically grown at this point, you know, 19 and 17. And, you know, there's times throughout the years where they'd have friends over. Like, I can't fathom being like, oh, hey, glad you're here. Here's a broom. I need you guys to go. Like, that just wouldn't happen. You know, like, I would never task any of my kids' friends with house chores. Like,
right. Here's the difference between me and you.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. So
so you do it.
I have no problem doing that.
That's fucking great.
And they're not huge chores. You know, I've got an 8-year-old son, but I'm like, hey, go pick up all of the sticks in the front yard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then you guys can go play. Yeah. Or it's like, there's always a reward element probably built into it. Yeah. Or like, you know, my daughter's friends come over and they play, you know, princess dress up. And then they go to leave, and I'm like, no. Yeah. Everything back where it came from. Pack all that shit up. And then they do it. Yeah. And so it's like, it's an expected behavior. But I haven't gone overboard yet. I haven't been like, you want to go play baseball with your buddies? No problem. I'll mow the lawn.
Yeah.
I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get there. He's only 8, right?
Exactly.
So what, like the in terms of the path of Glenn ending up in the SEAL teams is pretty, I would say, remarkable given the upbringing and kind of the early years out of high school. If you could kind of walk us through from when you guys graduated, what the plan was, would you have ever thought that it would have gone that way? And how did it end up to where he decided to join the Navy?
Well, let's go back to Massachusetts as a culture, right? Like, and I think there could be some misconceptions out of, like, if you look at New England, you have one of the most patriotic parts of this country. Like, in my hometown, my memories of growing up included an American flag hanging on damn near every single porch. And, you know, today you still see that. You might see it with Black Lives Matter. You might see it with, you know, Trump 2024. Like, there's different versions of it, but there's a consistent overarching theme in Massachusetts around patriotism. And it's not even discussed. You don't need to discuss it. You fucking love your country and you love what we're able to do here. And we love having the ability to, hey, think whichever way you want to, but appreciate that there's a groundwork laid to be able to have those diverse sets of opinions. And we were all raised that way. At the same time, it just wasn't in our high school culture to be like, hey, the ROTC guys over there at recruitment day, and like, people just didn't gravitate towards that. Winchester's definitely an academic town. It was a wealthier town. And even though Glenn and I weren't on the wealthiest side of things, like, academia was what it was all about. So it was the expectation. The expectation wasn't you're going to get out of high school and you're going to join the military. The expectation was you're going to get out of high school and you're going to go to college. You are going to make yourself better. You're going to go to college. You're going to have those 4 years. And then you're going to go get a job. And you're going to get that job. And then you're going to get a wife. And you are going to have a family. And you are going to climb that ladder. Now, in our high school, there was a very interesting award given out. There's like most popular, best looking, you know, you name it, all the different things. And there was, in our yearbook, was an award called most likely to ... Yours truly won that award.
Like the Grifter Award?
Just most likely to, who the fuck knows where this guy's going.
Yeah.
And I was that guy.
Yeah.
Chuck Shannon beat Glenn for that award the year before.
Wow.
And, you know, like, class of 88, most likely to ... Chuck Shannon. Who the fuck knew where he was going?
Yeah.
Sean Lake, you know, guy graduates from college. Like, you know, where, you know, you have to go, or graduates high school. Where's he going to go to college? And it's like, for me, I chose to go to the most punk rock college that I could. Like, you had to go somewhere. Like, you had to have that next step. So I was like, my buddy was going to New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And I was like, There is nothing more punk rock than going from Massachusetts down there. Now, he was going because he wanted to study criminal justice. I was going because I wanted to flip the bird to the world.
Yeah.
Glenn chose to go to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical Institute to become an airline pilot in Prescott, Arizona.
I mean, was that a impulse decision, or had he talked about wanting to do that prior to?
Nope. He wanted to see the world, wanted to travel.
Just like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Adventure. I wanted to become a pro snowboarder. I knew that in high school. I wanted to travel the world and snowboard. And there was a key common thing there, right? Travel the world. Like, what's the world all about? How can we get out? So going to New Mexico was the coolest thing in the world to me because it was so foreign from the four walls that I was raised in. And it was time to break out. It's like going to UMass Amherst or going to a local school made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Breaking free and having an adventure, like that fucking got the juices flowing.
Yeah.
And Glenn was wired the exact same way. So he took off to Prescott, and then I would go and visit him because it was, like you fly to Phoenix, it's like a fucking 40-minute flight. And I remember like Glenn picking me up on a motorcycle, like a little Honda Rebel. And I'm like, what? You got to be kidding me.
Did you ever ride growing up?
No.
Not at all. Do you now?
I did in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And then Heather swore me off a motorcycle. Like when we started dating and we knew we were getting married, she's like, no, just whatever. That's not on the menu. She's like, I already got to deal with you going snowboarding in Alaska and like trying to throw yourself off a mountain. She's like, you don't need to add another high risk element to our lives.
We're going to have to talk about that later.
Yeah. I think you can take that offline.
Yeah. All right.
Or online.
Yeah, we'll go to the house. We'll talk about that. All right. So he picks you up on a bike. And you're like, dude, what the fuck? Then what?
So we rally up to Prescott. I get a taste of like what he's living up there, and it was like, this is Glenn, by the way, in the height of his hippie years. So we got to talk about Glenn the hippie.
Yeah.
We were all in this, like, we listened to the Smiths and the Cocteau Twins, and then there was like this Grateful Dead faction, and Glenn and my brother Guy went all in Grateful Dead. Like they were just like, oh yeah, man, the jams, like this is great. Now, Glenn wasn't a pothead. I wasn't a pothead. Like, we loved having our fucking Budweisers and drinking some Carling Black Labels, but getting high was like, that was other people's game. And we could talk more about the getting in trouble thing because there might have been a couple illicit drug deals gone wrong that you probably heard stories about back then.
Oh man,
the famous cow shit hashish sale. And you don't know. Yeah. But so like he takes off to Prescott. I visit him up there. I get a taste for that world. And it's like Glenn's got the fucking beads hanging down to walk into his room. And like, it's all very teenage hippie, incense burning and all the shit. While he's in Embry-Riddle, like going to fucking flight school, keeping it high and tight. And he's growing shaggy, long ass hair. So we go home that summer after my freshman year. And, I'm 18, just turning 19. Glenn's 19. And we're just like, I don't know about this school thing, man. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I like this isn't what I thought. So I'm like, I'm kind of shook on it. And Glenn like leads the charge. He's like, let's go to Snowbird, Utah for 1 year and be ski bums. My brother's like, yeah, it's a great idea. And Guy had dropped out of school already and done like a couple months working down in Cape Cod on Nantucket as a dishwasher. And he got a taste for it. And like, I wasn't flunking out of school, but like my mom knew I was not applying myself. And Glenn always did good on academics, but like his heart wasn't in it. Yeah. He was like, this isn't the adventure I want. The adventure I want is in the mountains. Glenn wanted to become a professional skier. So we sat down, we talked about like, I wanted to be a pro snowboarder. Everyone in the world knew it. Like anyone around me knew that I was like itching for that chance. Glenn wanted to be a pro skier. This is 1990.
So hang on though. That's like cat and dogs, right? Like why did he ski and you snowboard, especially given at that time
the tensions in the air between the two sport cultures were from a distance, right? It was like, I don't know you, you ski, fuck you. Oh, you're my best friend and you ski? Totally cool with that.
But I mean,
totally.
But why did he ski and you snowboard and not you both do the same thing?
You know what? Great question. So he tried snowboarding later. Just like I started skiing. I mean, I skied my whole life. I switched over to snowboarding when I was like 16 and I just fell in love with it. Glenn had tried snowboarding, but like, it's kind of like skateboarding, right? Like Glenn wasn't a very good skateboarder.
Yeah.
I wasn't a very good skateboarder, but I was 5 times better skateboarder than Glenn was. I just loved it. Like I loved standing sideways and doing shit. Glenn loved skiing and, aiming down the hill. I forgave him for it. It's just a lesser choice.
Yeah.
but he was a ripping athlete. Like Glenn, like he was a varsity wrestler. He was well conditioned. Like he could put on a pair of skis and rip down the hill. But that expression, that individual expression, he was drawn to. I was drawn to. And I didn't know anything about Snowbird, Utah. I'd only been to Jackson Hole once, like a couple years earlier. I didn't know anything about skiing out west, but I was like, cool, new adventure. Fuck yeah, sign me up. Mom, I'm dropping out of college. I'm going to go become a pro snowboarder. And her words on it were, well, good, because like you're wasting my money right now in college. Like this is a total waste. So she was kind of like, go get it out of your system.
Yeah.
My dad gave me the ditch digger speech, and Glenn's dad kind of did the same thing to him. Yeah. And it was like, well, you know what? I'm not asking for a handout. I'm going. So we each had our own journey to meet in Utah. And again, we're talking payphone coordination. He takes off that summer and goes and tours with the Grateful Dead. So he and my brother, I dropped him off on the side of the freeway on Interstate fucking 95. And Glenn has a backpack with a little tent and a fucking roll-up sleeping bag in it and a little bit of money that he made from painting houses. And he and my brother decide they're going to go to the first Grateful Dead show, and then they're going to sell peanut butter sandwiches in the parking lot to make enough money to go to the next Grateful Dead show and the next Grateful Dead show. And they're going to do that all into the fall. And then we're going to meet in Utah. Well, actually, originally we're going to meet in Steamboat, Colorado. And we're going to get jobs at Steamboat, and we're going to work there. I fucked that plan up because I went and got into a bunch of trouble in Savannah, Georgia, with another buddy of mine that I was like going to do this whole cross country drive with. And he ended up getting his car booted, like fucking got drunk and left it somewhere and got, you know, had like 15 back parking tickets in Savannah, Georgia when he was going to college there. I'm working as a bar back and I'm just fucking miserable. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like my buddy's now stuck here for 3 more months. I got to get the hell out of here. I want to go snowboard. So I had enough money to sell like all my CDs that I brought with me because I was in his car. So I sold everything that I had enough money for a Greyhound ticket, and I had missed the time hack at that point to get to Steamboat, and Glenn pulled the audible and said, well, we're going to Snowbird then, because that was always what he wanted to do. And I bought a Greyhound ticket to Midvale, Utah. Fucking drove 2.5 days on a Greyhound bus with, you know, $50 to my name and a backpack and a snowboard. And I got off there and I'm like, here's my snowboard under one arm and my backpack with my snowboard boots in it and a couple changes of clothes. And Glenn picks me up at the bus station, takes one look at me and he's like, holy shit. And like,
we're doing it.
He tells the story differently. I had like half a jug of water and like a fucking half a ham sandwich. Yeah. And I offered them to Glenn and he's just like shaking his head at me. He's like, wow. And he always reflects on it. He's like, I can't believe that like your first notion getting off that bus was to offer me things. He's like, you look like you were about to fucking die. Like I had to save you. And that was like, but that was our friendship, like looking after each other. And, you know, that's it. We go there, we get jobs at Snowbird, and that started that adventure. Like we rented an apartment in Midvale, Utah, became best friends with the guys that lived in the apartment down below us in the same complex. And the best part about it was we all wanted to work and live around Snowbird. So I got a job as a baker's assistant. So I got the night job, a fucking perfect job to go and ride snowboards all day. Glenn and Guy can't get hired.
Why?
Because they just got off tour with the Grateful Dead, man. They weren't looking their best. They had to go up the road to Alta, Utah to get jobs as lifties.
Holy shit.
So our first year at Snowbird wasn't at Snowbird. Yeah. I rode Snowbird and they had to go to Alta. It was fucking great.
So you're rubbing that in their face the whole fucking time.
For years. Yeah. And then they modeled themselves and polished themselves up. And
so what did they do there? You said lifties?
Lifties, lift operator.
Oh, okay.
They literally made sure that, Mike, when you sit down on the chair, it swoops in underneath your legs and you successfully get off the lift at the top.
So being a baker's assistant and a lifty was enough monetarily for you guys to be able to live on your own and survive?
Yeah, you make like $6-7 an hour, man. You're crushing it.
God, it's wild. I mean, like hearing you tell just the story of how you got there and thinking of coordinating that where, like, obviously you don't have a cell phone.
Payphone.
But even with a payphone, it's like, how do you even keep in touch with somebody that way? You know, like that's dicey.
Yeah, you triangulate it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you call Glenn's mom and then Glenn's mom knows that, you know, he's going to talk to Glenn because Glenn's payphoning from the road, like while he's on tour with the Dead. You know, like he's like out there in, I don't know, Minnesota or something. Like, all right, well, the show's about to start, but all right, what's the next plan? Because he was very logistic minded and like kept to the plan. So like I knew he'd be there in Utah when I got off the Greyhound bus.
They made enough money selling fucking peanut butter sandwiches at Grateful Dead concerts.
You'd be surprised what a high motherfucker will pay for a peanut butter sandwich, apparently.
Oh, that's fucking great. I mean, I never knew that's how he supported it. You know?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, peanut butter sandwiches, man. You want jelly? Yeah. It's going to cost you extra.
Extra. All right, so you guys, after that first year, did you end up linking up and then they got hired on at Snowbird?
Yeah, well, Glenn and I had kind of a famous adventure when the season was over, my brother was like, okay, I got to go back to college. Like he was like, I'm going to head home. We were with our buddy Marty. Marty ended up being like, I got to go back to Rhode Island. Like, so everyone's kind of disbanding at the end of the season. Glenn and I, like, it was just about what the next adventure was. What were we going to hatch next? At this point, we're thick as thieves. Like, what are we doing? And I came up with the idea to go and move to Alaska and become a fisherman. I was kind of in the family DNA. We had heard stories about how much money you could make if you're out on a salmon boat, if you're out on a cod boat. Like, you can just crush it if you just get on a boat. So we decided to hitchhike to Port Angeles, Washington, and take a ferry from Seattle to Ketchikan, Alaska. That was our next adventure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was like, get rid of all your shit and grab your backpack, and we're hitchhiking. We're going to hitchhike to Seattle. So we did that. I almost got us killed on that adventure. Glenn definitely fucking kind of reeled it in for me.
What happened?
Well, there's this veteran part of our population that, you know, is somewhat transitory in nature. And we got picked up by a Vietnam vet right outside like southern Idaho. Like, we're talking like 4 hitchhikes in. And this guy's like, oh, I'm going all the way to Seattle. And there's actually 2 parts to this story. Going all the way to Seattle, and on the ride up to Seattle, he's got this giant Econo van, like huge van. Like, he's a van life guy before Shane made it popular. And it's like, you know, we're pushing into midnight, whatever. And Glenn's like, hey man, I'm going to go rack out in the back. And this guy's got a cooler full of beer in the front. And I'm just riding shotgun with him, just swapping stories and talking about, like, listening to his life adventures. And he grabs a beer and hands me a beer. And next thing you know, he has another beer and I have another beer. Next thing you know, it's 4:00 in the morning, and we drank through that entire cooler, and he's fucking swerving the van back and forth. But I don't notice it because I'm pleasantly drunk. Glenn wakes up, and it's like, the fuck's happening around here? Like, holy shit. And this guy's just kind of, you know, swerving back and forth, drunk out of his mind.
Jesus.
Driving us into Seattle. And Glenn's like, can you pull over, man? He pulls over. We hop out. And he's like, you sure you guys don't want to keep going? He's like, nah, man, we're good, thanks. And I'm like, he peels off and takes off. And Glenn just takes one look at me. And he's like, you dumb motherfucker. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. So like we always traded those experiences, because the next one, you know, we end up on the rest of the hitchhike up. And on the way back, we go to Alaska. We get our jobs in a cannery, which is like the most miserable fucking job you can get. Like, we're fish gutters.
Really?
And we worked for 2.5 hours, and there was this like little fucking 5'6" dude running around just fucking screaming at you, because no matter how fast you went, you weren't scraping guts fast enough. And we're just like, we don't want to be here. We want to be out on a boat. Like, that's where the fucking cool shit happens. And so after 2.5 hours, Glenn's like, let's fucking quit. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. This is the worst job I've ever had in my life. I'm covered in fish guts, and this guy's fucking midget boy over here is barking at me. So we quit. We walk up. They knew, like, so many people had gone into the cannery, taken jobs, and quit within 2 hours. They had our paychecks waiting for us. Like, yeah, here you go. 2.5 hours worth of work at, you know, $10 an hour or whatever. We're like, get the fuck out of here. So we go to hitchhike back down, but this time we have a new plan. We're going to go to San Francisco, because our buddy Chuck Shannon had settled in, and again, payphones calling back and forth, convinced us that was the place to be. So total change of plan. Alaska was a flame out after 2 weeks. We got the fuck out of there, and we go to hitchhike down, and we're in Seattle, and we're taking a bus. Glenn found the bus line that we were going to take. It wasn't Greyhound. It was called the Green Tortoise.
The Terrapin.
Yeah. So he found a bus that you knew wasn't going to go fast, but was going to get us there. And this is Glenn. Glenn's in the height of his hippie years, right? Yeah. Speed metal Sean and hippie Glenn. And we go show up at the bus, and we're talking like, you got to be on the bus at like 6:30 in the morning. And we roll up there, and Glen's pulling one of these, like patting himself down. I'm like, what's up, Glen? And he's like, fuck. I lost my wallet. ID,
everything,
cash, gone. And I'm like, oh, you don't say. I didn't lose my wallet, Glen. So I'm like, I got you, man. Don't worry about it. Like, we'll figure this out when we get to San Francisco. Like, we'll navigate it. So I go up to pay the guy. Like, the bus driver looks like he's fucking Charles Manson. Like, long, shaggy hair, no swastika on the forehead or anything, but definitely looks like he's been up for about 14 days straight. And it's like $60 a ticket, right? So it's like hand the guy $120. So I hand him, whatever exchange I had to get over that, like $125. And he looks at me and he hands me back $100. And I just put it right in my pocket. And then he hands me a $5 and then another $5 and then pulls out some change. And Glen's watching me just like, what the fuck's happening here? I ended up, I think it cost us about $4.50 to ride that bus because that guy was so out of his mind that he just couldn't count.
Holy shit.
So I'm like, Glen, I just made our money back, dude. I just hit the fucking jackpot here.
Sit down
and he's trying to be like honest. I'm like shooting him an elbow, like, shut the fuck up. Let this happen.
It's my money.
And, but that was Glen, for all of his being buttoned up and organized, then he would lose his fucking wallet.
Yeah. Which, like, at that time and in those circumstances, that's a big fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you even get your ID halfway across the fucking country? Like, holy shit.
No, your mom mails you your birth certificate and you have to go and start the process over. Like, where's your your social security card was gold. Like, you needed that. You can't lose that shit.
Yeah, man. All right, so you get down to San Francisco.
And, I mean, that was just the adventure continues. I got a job in a moving company. Glen did the fucking breaking away thing. Like, he became a bicycle messenger in the city. Like,
oh, shit.
Dream job. Bicycle messenger. Like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to deliver packages. Like, I'm going to deliver architecture plans around the city and just ride my bike up and around. And I'm going to get to know every in and out of San Francisco. Like, Glen, adventure, go. And I was like, I'm going to work for a moving company. Like, I don't know. Like, let's just try something totally different.
Yeah.
And we were 19 years old at the time. We both had fake IDs. We used those fake IDs to get a job at a beer company. And so our night jobs was we came together at night and we capped beer at Marin Brew Company. Chuck Shannon had a fake ID and was the bartender. So all three of us were in just out of high school, working at a bar in Marin County.
The fact that Glen went on to be a team guy and that Chuck Shannon, I'm not going to say what he does now just because of the sensitivities of it, but it's about as polar opposite of having that as a 19-year-old as you can get. Like, the fact that that's what he did and what he's doing now is priceless.
Most likely to
dot. So how long did you guys were you there for?
So we were only in San Francisco for a couple of months.
Oh, okay.
And I took off and I tried going back to college. I did my 1 year in the mountains and I did one semester and I flamed out again. Like, I just wasn't where I wanted to be. And Glen moved back to Utah. And so I ended up taking a shot at going to Squaw Valley, and I moved out there for 2 years. So then Glen and I, we kind of broke up the band for a while. He was skiing every chance he could in Utah, learning about backcountry adventures and like going hiking in the backcountry. And I got sponsored when I was at Squaw Valley. So I got like my first endorsement there that kind of like was the first taste of like, oh shit, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
This is the dream. Like, the dream is to get free gear. The dream is to travel and snowboard. The dream is to have your photo taken and being put in a magazine. Like, that was like the pinnacle experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, focusing on you for a quick second, the dream of becoming a professional athlete is something that I think, I would even say most kids at some point in their life, I mean, just about any kid that plays any sport dreams of that. Almost none of them do it.
Yeah.
Why do you think you had an ability to succeed where very few other kids do?
Well, first I got to say, like, I wasn't a very talented athlete. Like, I wasn't like gifted where you put a skateboard under my feet and I'm instantly skating vert and like.
You mean like Glen?
Yeah. He was the gifted athlete. Yeah. Son of a bitch. I wasn't. Like, I had to work for it. But if I liked it, I was willing to put in the work. Like, I let passion kind of drive it. So there was a work ethic that maybe came from being from New England, but like the sensation of snowboarding and skateboarding, like they were like, it was just a feel. Like it's hard to describe it if you don't do it, but there was something about it that just lit me up. So the passion sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying the passion part to become a professional athlete was totally uncharted.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like, it's not like you go in and say, well, a professional baseball player minimum wage is $550,000 a year. AAA ball makes $50,000 a year. Like, you can navigate a career and kind of figure out what you're going to make along the way. Snowboarding was a total unknown. You just knew you moved to the mountains and you lived it. And that was really more what it was for me. It was like, I wanted to live it.
Yeah.
And then the ego part was like, yeah, but I want to take this to the highest level I can. Like, I want to push myself. I want to see what I'm made of.
Yeah.
I want to scare the living shit out of myself on a mountain and use my brains and wit and body to navigate a path from top to bottom. And I want to make it look as good as it can. Yeah. That was like the art in skiing and snowboarding back then to me.
I do have a quick question from a Patreon member. This is from Fritha, since this is what we're talking about and it applies. Why do you think skateboarding took nearly 20 years longer than snowboarding to become an Olympic sport, even though skateboarding has been a prominent advertising tactic used by major companies for the last 20 years?
Oh, easily. Skateboarding wouldn't have it.
Wouldn't have what?
Wouldn't have fucking Olympics. Wouldn't have organized sport. Skateboarding bristled against all of those things for as long as possible to preserve its individual culture. Its culture of, yeah, dude, it's fucking, we're doing this our way.
Yeah.
The Olympics aren't our way. That's your way, man.
Yeah.
And X Games was a tough enough pill for everyone to embrace. And I think the reason skateboarding, got so mainstream and was allowed to become so mainstream is you had these people that kind of recognized that, hey man, we can either keep this our little best kept secret, or we can share this amazing gift with the world. And that took time to shift over, where snowboarding didn't have that anchoring. Snowboarding was biting skateboard culture and surf culture to like figure out our identity. Yeah. So when the Olympics came, more people than not raised their hands and said, well, yeah, that sounds great. Skateboarding was like, nah, man, we're going to do this on our terms.
We're still rocking the skateboarding is not a crime t-shirt and fucking pissing everybody off. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, but I would say, skateboarding now, they have those stats out there. There's more people that identify as skateboarders and Little League baseball players.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild.
It's an old stat now. Yeah. I think that was like 10 years ago. I remember working at DC Shoes and people were like fucking celebrating. They're like, yeah, fucking skateboarding is bigger than Little League baseball.
That's probably why the United States gets their ass kicked in baseball nowadays, it seems like. But so how did you guys link back up?
So I basically like just burned through Tahoe. I just lived as fucking hard as I could, as fast as I could. And
that's where Squaw Valley is.
Yeah, that's where Squaw Valley is. And Squaw Valley, which is now Palisades. So we were just a bunch of fucking hellions back then, just like dyeing your hair purple and running around the mountain and just being that guy. But I got sponsored out of that. I also burned myself out while I was out there. And now I'm like 22. And, I was like, I got to get out of here. Like I am destroying myself. I was at least self-aware enough to know that. And, conversation with Glenn, right? Anchoring force in my life. Like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, dude, come back out. It's like the snow's like, we just had the most world-class snow year. Snow is all time. You got to get out here, get back to Utah. So I'm like, no problem. So it doesn't take much for me. I packed up my 85 Subaru GL 1800 and all my belongings fit in the car. That was a rule that I had. If it didn't fit in the truck, in my station wagon, like it didn't come. Yeah. So drove that out to Utah and reconnected with Glenn, and like half the guys that I knew from 3 years earlier were all there. And it was like, I instantly had a tight group of friends, and there was good photography happening there. There was good videography. Like you could do your sport there. Like it was becoming a more established place. So that's when snowboarding really started to take off for me. That's when I started getting paychecks from it. And Glenn was there the whole time fighting his way in on the skiing side. Yeah. Like he was an avid telemarketer. He was a good downhill skier. He had the work ethic. Like he would show up for photo shoots, like, cause that was one of the things back then. Like if you showed up for a photo shoot and it was good conditions out, you were going to do well. But if you partied your face off and blew it, like sooner or later, people stopped calling you.
Yeah. When he was on some magazine covers, right?
Oh yeah.
A bunch of them.
Yeah. He got 2 magazine covers. It was a more local Utah magazine called Backcountry. But in that world, It was very well established. And he shot with some of the, Scott Markowitz, some of the most famous photographers in the ski world.
Yeah.
And Glen was super well liked then. It's not that he didn't have what it takes. It's that skiing was in a different place in the 90s. Like this is in the early mid 90s. Snowboarding was on the stratospheric rise. So I was at the right place at the right time with the right sport. Glen was going through a sport that hadn't gone to the fat skis yet. It hadn't reinvented itself yet. So it was in this kind of hangover phase where it just wasn't as dynamic as snowboarding was.
Yeah.
So there wasn't enough money to go around. So as good as he was, he just didn't quite make it, which is why there was this fork in the road. Like, when we were turning 25, that was the pivotal, like, shit's got to change. Like he was 24, I was 23. And this is what we did. Like we would have these sit down life conversations about like, hey man, like what's next? What do you think the next thing is? And we were totally self-aware to know that like, you can't do this forever.
Yeah.
And I had a plan in my head. I was like, I'm going to use snowboarding to pay for college. Like, I don't know when I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to get my way back into it, but I'm going to go back to school. And, Glen at that point, he had just gotten back from Costa Rica. So he went on a surf trip with Marty and like they had their, again, full adventure style, right?
Yeah.
And he comes back from that trip, also lost his guitar on that trip, like fucking left it on a bus because that forgetful motherfucker.
Yeah.
So
with his wallet.
But what he did do while he was there was he met a couple off-duty Navy SEALs. Now, at this time, it's like 94, 95. We're talking like Charlie Sheen movie, Navy SEALs.
Not very many people knew.
No one knew what that was. Like, I only knew it because of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I met these guys. We were both like surfing Peflonies together, some spot down there. And he's like, they told me I got what it takes. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I want to see what this is all about. He said, I think I'm going to join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL. And don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, our friends would crucify him. Like our ski bum burnout buddies would just lit him up if they knew that he was going to go join the Navy. So he swore me to secrecy. And he's like, can you drive me to the Navy recruiter? And there's a Navy recruiter in Sandy, Utah. And we drove down together. Here I am with fucking long shaggy hair and Glen's long shaggy hair. And he goes down there and like, he was just like, he wanted to see what he was made of. And it was like enough to go down there and talk to the recruiter.
It's fascinating.
And I mean, the real deal was he gave himself a timeline. He was like, if I make it as a pro skier, I'm not doing this. Like, that's how this could have gone.
Yeah.
But he's like, if I don't make it as a pro skier by the time I turn 25, I'm joining the Navy and becoming a SEAL. So, that year came and went. Glen did not become a professional skier. And we went back down to the Navy recruiter and Glen signed his contract and was off to basic training.
Man. Hearing it from, I remember, he would tell me this stuff or kind of, gave me his backstory when I first met him. But keep in mind, I was 19. This was like my concept of even what he was talking about was almost non-existent. Like my ability, like I heard what he was saying, but not really, because it was just like, what? You filed the dead? And what? Like it just didn't make any sense. It's like, that's fucking dumb. Well, I'm glad you're here. It's good to meet you, buddy. And it was that kind of glossed over, I guess. But I do remember, or correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, wasn't he doing whitewater rafting guiding in the summertime?
Yeah, well, he had a couple of different jobs. I mean, summertime, like he went to Costa Rica. He didn't go there for the whole summer.
Yeah,
he would go down to Moab, and he was a whitewater river raft guide for like 3 or 4 summers, like a good chunk. Like he was really good at it, and I did a couple runs with him down the river. I mean, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So he would do that. He was a ranch hand one summer. He moved up to Wyoming and like literally banged out fence posts all summer long. He would take these adventure jobs and like I got back into house painting. Like I would go up to Park City and paint millionaires' houses and you're just stacking Benjamins and you're just making enough money to pad yourself to go and have the next adventure.
Yeah.
Is what it was all about. And all our friends had graduated college. Like when Glen and I were having the like what's next discussion, everyone had graduated school. We were the only ski bums out of all of our friends from high school. All the boys were like, a couple of them were already engaged, but they were on in the next chapter. And we were looking at the older ski bums.
Like, I don't want to be that guy.
I don't want to be that guy. No, thank you.
Yeah. When you guys had the conversation, or when he told you that he wanted to join the SEAL teams or that he thought maybe he did, Did you ask him, or did he ever say anything more about his interaction with the guys that inspired that? Because to me, it's like, well, I met these guys, they're team guys, they said I had what it takes. Like, that's still not enough for most people to be like, you know what, I want to go do that. Was there something about those guys that he ever mentioned that said, like, there was something about them that made me want to do that?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, memory's a little foggy because we're going back 30 years on this one, but what I remember from that was actually, let me pull back a step. Think of what we just said about Glenn and the kind of lifestyle that we lived, right? This very transient, up for adventure lifestyle that led you to become a ranch hand, a river guide, painting houses, touring with the Grateful Dead. Like, these are really eclectic jobs to do before your 21st birthday.
Yeah.
And he did them all. So, and then, hey, I got some free extra time. I'm going to take this money I made river guiding. I'm going to go to Costa Rica and I'm going to learn how to surf. Like, that's Glenn.
Who does that? Yeah.
Like we all did, right? Yeah. But like, we were a very small subculture of adventure seekers and like the adrenaline junkies. Like, we were all about it.
I mean, almost like Point Break a little bit, minus the bank robbery.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah. No bank robberies.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Some illicit drug deals that went wrong, but you know, it was all harmless because we actually never knew what we were doing. So you know, no one got hurt.
Yeah. But that same kind of lifestyle though, a little bit, like the Point Break, like.
Yeah. Like literally it's a term I kind of coined this one later. We used to call them aggro slackers. And the aggro slacker, Glenn and I would laugh in Encinitas because we'd be like, you know, what's funny? He's like, if there's good surf, just like it was in the mountains, everyone quits their job, fucking moves mountains to like be diligently in the water, 6 a.m., dawn patrol, like ready to go. Like, you have to be disciplined, ready, and on it. But hey, man, I just don't know if I can go to work today. So we would call them like, these guys are super aggro to get in the water to pursue their thing, but in the rest of their lives are total slackers.
Yeah.
I'm like, the aggro slackers everywhere. We just were willing to work. Like, we were willing to hold down the job. And Glenn was like, again, he was the leader of that movement. I mean, you know, he was the most organized. So when he goes to Costa Rica, like, he's working out. Like, you know, he never didn't train. Like, he always was in fit, good shape. We all just kind of were in the shadow. Like, oh, what are you doing today? I'm going to go do this workout. It's called Bears and Chiefs, which is a U.S. rowing team workout that he picked off and had on a scrap piece of paper. It was high intensity interval training. And we'd do it for, 30, 45 minutes, kick the living shit out of yourselves. And Glenn would always lead the charge. He was the fucking band leader for all of it, right back to that high school example. So he goes down there and he meets a couple of Navy SEALs and they pumped him up, but he earned it. Like, he went and worked out with these guys. He went and surfed with them. He had beers with them. Like, you're in like a one-horse town.
Yeah.
And they inspired him to see what he was made of. Like, I really want to touch on that because I've read enough books and I've been around enough guys in the community where there's a lot of them that go into it with a very patriotic zeal, post 9/11, and like Ryan Parrott's a guy like that comes to mind. Glenn approached it from a different angle. It was, what was he made of? He backfilled in the rest of it. Like, we all had patriotism. That was a given. Like, that was a table stake. But it was the personal challenge element of it that really got him fucking fired up, because he tried the ski thing and like, he took it to a pretty high level, but it was like, nah, man, like I did that. I checked that box. I'm restless. What's next? I'm restless. What's next? Like, like, you want to have that intense interaction with life.
Yeah. And
that was his next intense interaction. So they built him up, and then he started getting curious. We rented the movie on VHS. Like, all that stereotypical shit you hear from old SEALs, like Glenn did all those things. And he just, like, it made him curious. What am I made of? What can I do? Can I do this? And the rest of us couldn't fathom it. Like, we couldn't get our heads around it. We were mere mortals.
Yeah. You're like, you're fucking out of your mind.
Yeah. And that was my conversation with him. But he swore me to secrecy to talk about it. And I'm like, dude, are you sure? Like, is this really what you want to do? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, I'll get behind that. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Like, I was in full support.
Yeah.
Drove him to the recruiter, like, watched him sign his contract.
How soon was he gone after that?
Pretty quick. Like, I couldn't tell anyone until he wanted to be the one to tell everyone. Yeah. But it was like July or something. It was like right after his birthday. And then, I think maybe a month goes by and he's off to basic. Yeah. Like, he flew home, got the famous red truck, got Betty the truck from his dad. He's off to basic training. And then a year later, dude, I roll up to Coronado, with Marty and Chad and a couple of the other buddies to watch Glenn go through his BUBS graduation.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that's fucking cool. Any idea who the SEALs were that he ran into? Did he ever link back up with them or mention them ever again?
Never mention him again.
Really?
You know, I've been around the SEAL community since my 20s.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Glen remembered them or maybe he did and he just kept it to himself, because Glen was pretty good at compartmentalizing things, but also really good at including people. So I can't imagine a world where he wouldn't have bumped into them and been like, hey man, thanks.
Yeah. Or reached out at least once and been like, hey, I made it. You were the guys, something, you know,
because he's the letter writer, right? I mean, Glen wrote letters endlessly. Like when Glen died, Greg, his older brother, came to the house. And I mean, I remember handing him cartons of Glen letters. And there were either letters that Glen had written to other people or letters that he had received in reply. But Glen was Facebook before Facebook. He was super interconnected. So you're right. I can't imagine that he wouldn't have reached out to them and acknowledged hey, something. I took this journey and you guys played a really key role in it.
Yeah.
But it was going to be something.
Yeah. Wild. All right. So you guys roll back or you guys roll up and you go to his graduation.
Oh yeah, man. I remember being at this point I'm 25 and I'm just approaching the peak years on the snowboard side.
Yeah. And
Glen is getting pinned and he's fucking shaved head and he's in his navy whites and there's this big ceremony and then we all go drinking as we were apt to do back then.
Yeah.
And we did a nice respectful dinner with Glen's mom and his dad was there. And I was the only guy from high school who'd made it to that chapter. But then we would always have these rally points that Glen was always, again, a ringleader for. But that weekend, I met some of his teammates. And I remember early on, I'm these guys are cool, man. We can all hang. Yeah. They're not nerds. Not a bunch of fucking jarhead, whatever. Pick a stereotype that a ski bum guy with no experience interacting with the military would think. Yeah. And these guys were great. I was like, oh, this is cool. We're going to hang. Fast forward 5 years and I end up meeting Clint. I end up meeting Shane, Brandon Webb, yourself, these guys that, are all kind of well known in the community, but they were just Glen's teammates. And they were the guys who would hang out at the house. We'd go to barbecues with, go mountain biking, right? Brian Curtis, fucking love that guy.
Yeah. God, that's so wild. So from the time that Glen graduated BUDS and became a SEAL until you guys started living together years later, was that kind of the gist of the relationship? Were intermittent link-ups and catch-up sessions and whatever? Because obviously he's gone all the fucking time.
Gone all the time.
And you're continuing the snowboard route, and then you get into kind of the business side of it, right?
Yeah. So my journey was, Glen takes off and joins the Navy. He's a Navy SEAL through 9/11. In 2001, through 9/11, he's stationed down in Coronado. Every Christmas or open window, he would pop out to Utah and go ski for a couple of days. He was absolutely adamant to getting time on snow as much as possible. And then it was just we just watched this little Glen wiry guy get bigger and bigger and bigger and just what the fuck, man? You move and ski just as well as you did when you weighed 30 less pounds and now you're just, this big monster. And everyone had a great time with it. We fucking loved it. Glen made it, man. Holy shit. But that was our interactions, would be in between deployments. Well, when 9/11 happened, Glen was thinking about getting out. We'd had one of those, the next conversation. And at that point, I had just quit snowboarding. I just, retired, or call it what you will. I had kind of ridden it as far as the wave was going to go. And I just wrapped up my college degree and I was on the next path. I'm okay, it's time for me to take my next step. Funny enough, my plan, I got a degree in political science. My plan was to join the State Department.
Oh shit.
Because I wanted to go and travel the world. So I was if I can go run security details and intel at the State Department, I can take the civil service exam and I'll be able to go and have the same adventure. It'll just be a totally different one. But I always loved politics, how government worked, the architecture behind it. And I wanted the adventure. I wanted to keep that going and I wanted, in my own small way, contribute. And kind of give back. And I thought that would be my way to do it and kind of scratch both things at the same time. And Glen's a SEAL, and then 9/11 happens. And so I'm graduating school and Glen he was thinking about getting out, but that was it. That ship sailed.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I think after that, there was actually a stopgap issue where they wouldn't have let him out anyway. And so I know for a period he was pretty disgruntled because they like stuffed him in a medical supply warehouse for a few months or maybe even longer than that. I remember, walking across the fucking street and visiting him, just like, dude, what the fuck? Like,
well, he made the mistake of letting people know that he was
Yeah.
going to leave.
Yeah.
And so they were pissed.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't leave, but they hadn't accepted that he was ready to lean into it and like really fucking serve.
Yeah.
And thank God that whatever happened, Glenn's charm, Glenn's ability to make people love him worked.
Yeah.
Because then he ended up on some famous deployments because of that.
Yeah. I mean, he ended up getting back into the same platoon that we were in, and then we ended up going to Iraq together. But it's fucked, man. It's wild how that path goes on. So I guess going into kind of where, Glenn gets out of the Navy, starts doing contracting work, you kind of get a real job, so to speak. You guys converge back together and start living together after he's been contracting a few years, correct?
Yeah, well, there was a little gap in there. So I graduated from school, the University of Utah, and it was after 9/11, and now it's 2002. So the Winter Olympics in Park City, and that year I moved to Encinitas, California. So Glenn's down in Coronado, and I moved to Encinitas. And I took a job as a North American team manager for Burton Snowboards. And they had this young kid named Sean White who lived in Carlsbad, which is the next town up. And they're like, hey, we need you to move to Encinitas and go work with Sean.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, he's an obscure character in snowboarding. So I was Sean's TM for that year. So all of a sudden, again, I'm traveling the world. So I didn't take the job at the State Department. I ended up getting this job offer, which was going to pay me gobs of cash, and it moved me to Encinitas. My best buddy's right down the street, man. It was like a dream come true. I'm like, my best friend's here. I can learn how to surf instead of snowboarding. Like, I've been living in the mountains forever. Like, this is cool. This checks a bunch of adventure boxes. Sean was awesome. I loved working with him and Kathy and the Raj and Jesse. Like, their whole family that was a super cool kind of immersion into the industry and business side of the action sports industry, which was super prevalent in Southern California. I mean, all your skateboard shoe companies, like Vans, DC Shoes, they're all out there. All the surf brands, Quicksilver, Hurley, Billabong, they're all in Orange County. Like, we're in the thick of it. And my best buddy's right down the street. So I end up working in that space, and that ended up becoming like what I do. And then I would just team up with Glenn on the weekends, and hang out. So fast forward a couple of years, Glenn was married to another girl from Winchester named Sonia. And Sonia was a diehard triathlete, like loved road cycling, wanted to be in the thick of it. Well, Encinitas was actually where that was all going down. That was like the heartbeat of the kind of cycling space. So Glenn, Irish, well, how do we say this appropriately today's day and age? Irish Jew that he was, hated the idea of spending money. He was very, very smart and strategic about his money spends. And so he had bought a townhome in North Park, and then he had to leverage that to buy a home in Encinitas. And this is in 2005 and 2006. So he's getting out of the Navy, buying a house in 2005 in Encinitas when interest rates are like at an all-time fucking high.
Yeah.
And housing values were at an all-time high back then. So he takes the move, he moves up to Encinitas, and he's commuting back to the base from Encinitas, but it's making his wife happy, and he pulled the move off, right? Like, he's like, I'm going to figure this one out. And we were all psyched. I was like, another buddy of ours from Winchester, Andy Lotz, had just started a watch company in town called Nixon. So it was like, Nixon Watches is there, Glenn's there, and like, we're all get to hang out all the time. It was fucking great. Glenn doesn't last a year in that house before he ends up getting a divorce. Him and Sonia just, he was done deploying. He was in this transition out. It was a rough patch for him and her. And, he ends up moving out. So he ends up moving into my house for a little while. And he gets out of the Navy, and he's like, all right, like, what's next? What am I going to do? And this was a question that he really struggled with. But like, that kind of covers us to 06, 07. And he's like, well, I'm gonna wrap up my bachelor's degree. I never did that. And I was like, yeah, man, that's a great move. I did mine. So he knocks out his bachelor's degree, moves out of the house. He's living with me in Carlsbad and kind of figuring it out. And then Sonia, like by 2009, she didn't want to be in the house anymore. So he moves back into the house, has to get a roommate, pay the mortgage. And at this point, he's fully divorced, but he's like, still hasn't figured it out. In those years was when he figured out contracting. Like, oh, wait, here I am getting out of the Navy making $70,000 a year, maybe. And I can now contract, do the exact same job, get super high speed engagements overseas, and then come home and be completely off the clock for 3-4 months at a time.
And make 4 times as much.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So he did a private contracting gig originally, but very quickly fell into direct contracting with the Central Intelligence Agency. So he didn't work for Blackwater. He worked for...
I think it was MVM.
Thank you. That was it. It was MVM.
Yeah.
Because I keep always thinking, like, oh, there's Triple Canopy, there's Blackwater, there's all these things that I never really knew much about. But no, he was MVM, and then he switched to contracting directly because he figured he could squeeze an extra nickel out of it. But that was Glenn. Like, it was one of his better qualities, was like the dude...
Frugalness.
Yeah, but that frugality, like, drove him to new opportunities. So, like, I couldn't shit on it. I would always make fun of him about, like, dude, just get some new clothes. Come on, man. You can afford this.
Yeah.
But he moved back into his house, and at this point now he's contracting for GRS. So he's a GRS operative working for the Central Intelligence Agency, and I'm getting a divorce. So now I'd gotten married during that time. That wasn't working out at all. And thank God there were no kids involved for Glenn's life or mine. But he's like, hey, man, I'm getting rid of this roommate and I need a new roommate. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm finally there. And Glenn's kind of like, you thick-headed motherfucker. Like, you never should have gotten married.
Yeah.
But, you know, hey, man, we have to have these experiences to lead us to where we are. So that was mine. And when I separated and I remember moving into his house on January 1st, 2010. And that was like, holy shit, here we are again. The band's back together. Like, we did it when we were teenagers, and Glenn moved out of his house when he was pissed off at his old man. And he moved into my house when he was 16. Then threw a house party and got kicked out of my house after that. But we were roommates at ski bumps in our 20s, and here we are again, 2 divorced guys hanging out in Encinitas and doing it all over. And it was just like, well, all right, you know, and at the time I was the director of marketing at DC Shoes. So I had this, like, you know, polished day job, and like I'm going to all the X Games and traveling the world and, like, you know, flying to Europe to make snowboards and all this cool shit. And Glenn's going to Iraq and blowing shit up. And then he's going to Beirut and, you know, like telling crazy stories about meeting women over there. He was on that TV show, The Wanted. It was an ABC Charlie Ebersol show.
Yeah, I remember that.
Couple episodes. He would get shoulder tapped for the most random stuff, but it made perfect sense. Like, hey, do you want to be on a documentary about, you know, shooting the Somali pirates off the, you know, the Captain Phillips adventure? And next thing you know, he's on a National Geographic special, and he's the one taking the shots. And, you know, Brandon Webb's behind him doing all the talking head stuff, and Glenn's just giving everyone a hard time. And so he's having this very eclectic set of adventures, but all the while he's like, what's next? And, you know, like, turn 40, man, that's midlife crisis time. Like, that shit's real. Like, you want to know what it's all about. You're not quite, I think, in a shift for different people. It probably happens differently, of like, you're slaying dragons in life to, like, lay your fortress, lay your foundation, like, find your princess. And he tried doing that, and it didn't work the way he wanted it to. And then it's about legacy. What's next? And these are really heady concepts that we would have while we were working out, and we would train together all the time. Like, Glenn, I credit Glenn with, like, you know, my fitness journey and, like, and just taking care of the body, because, you know, we didn't do that in snowboarding. That wasn't an organized thing. Like, Sean White and his generation were really the first ones that were like personal trainers, accountability, like
diet, fucking blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. All that boring shit that actually, you know, leads to championships and gold medals and accolades, or just a better experience. Like, you're just optimizing the body. And, like, we didn't really get it. We did CrossFit and drank 4 IPAs afterwards because we could. Yeah. Well, it's a lifestyle. Yeah. But yeah, man, like, we ended up becoming roommates in early 2010, and the next, you know, almost 3 years of our lives were just in between his deployments and what adventures we would have.
Yeah. And that's the house that you're still in now, right? Yeah.
So, you know, Glenn had bought that house, and he had the North Park house. And when Glenn died, you know, I was the executor of his estate. I was in charge of all of his legal affairs, and Glenn had the incredible inconvenience of dying during the recession. So the house was completely upside down economically. Like, he owed more on the house than the house was listed as being worth.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with the North Park house. So he really fucked me over on the property thing.
Oh man. Well, yeah. So, but the one that you're in now is one of those two properties, right?
Yeah. So I actually kept them both.
Oh, okay.
I ended up using my savings and like my money, and I was just like, part of it was just survival. Like I couldn't get out of the mortgages. Yeah. Like I couldn't unfuck that process fast enough.
Yeah.
So because I was stuck in it, I just had to keep putting money into them. And eventually the call was made, when Heather and I knew we were going to get married, and we got married. And I was like, I don't think I can be in this house anymore. Like there's too many memories, and it's too strong. And it was like everyone's Glen memorial. Like, Shane Hyatt moved out after Glen died and stayed with us for 3.5 months. And it became this like kind of like Mecca destination to soak up all the things that Glen was, which was amazing. But after a couple of years of that, it had kind of run its course. We ended up deciding to keep the house, but we decided to gut it, remodel the whole thing, and like completely change it over and make it ours. And that actually worked really well, because now I can be in the house and I can smile at a memory of Glen, but it's not like hit me in the face where it's like, it's too much.
Yeah. I can imagine that'd be, I can see the almost tough call of even wanting to keep it or not. Like, of course you want to keep it, but in that same vein, it's hard to do it. It's hard to live in it. And but in the same token, like I wouldn't want somebody else living in it either. It's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't, almost a little bit.
Yeah. I definitely felt like there was a couple of things that I felt like, man, this is just part of Glen's legacy. So like, even if you're not going to live in the house, don't sell it.
Yeah.
Just hold on to this. It was Glen's truck and that house were the two things.
Yeah. All right. So as you guys are living there, everybody remembers where they were on 9/11, similarly with Benghazi, because of how impactful it was for all of us that knew Glen so well. Can you walk us through when you heard and what was going on and kind of the initial gut punch that it was?
Yeah, so that last summer with Glen was really fucking weird. And like I'll be super open about the spidey sense that I had about that deployment. Like, this was supposed to be Glen's last run. Glen had decided finally that he was going to go to a physician's assistance program at the University of Utah. This was going to be his last deployment. He was going to go spring, summer semester. I was going to maybe take over the house with Heather. Like he had brought her in and really been like, you should live here. And like, we were at that point in like evolving our relationship, and it was just a shift. There was a shift in the tide. Like, it was time. Mm-hmm. It had run its course. It was time for us to go and do our next adventures. And mine was with Heather. Glen's was to do this. He was different on that departure. He had broken up with his girlfriend that he'd had on and off for, the last 3 years prior. He wanted me to take him to the airport and see him off. And I never did.
That was abnormal or normal?
I normally didn't take him on his deployments. It was just like, no, man, get the fuck out of here. And he'd look at me and be like, don't kill my plants. Typical Glen.
Yeah.
And
because he had fucking plants everywhere.
Dude, he homebodied. Yeah. Like, that was his transition. Like, when you're not in a fucking war zone and you're like keeping your head on a swivel or whatever, like that intense environment, he would come home and he would garden. Yeah. And he would bake casseroles and he would cook. Like, I still have his recipe book. Glen's recipes is like a bunch of cutouts from, Good Housekeeping magazine. Like, the dude was completely at odds. Like, you would never think like, oh, there's the Navy SEAL cookbook.
While we're on the Glen cookbook, we've talked a little bit about it before. Like, what are the odds of turning that into that, like, officially, like for sale kind of thing?
I'm doing it.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to drive proceeds to Glen's foundation. Yeah. But it was like, Heather and I talked about it once. We're like, the world needs this. They need the Glen Doherty Navy SEAL cookbook.
I still have several recipes from him. Like, I remember going at that house having a Thanksgiving dinner once, and he made the way that he made Brussels sprouts. He like fucking pureed them or some shit and made this like
shredded them.
Yeah, I was just like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, dude, I don't even know what I'm eating right now, but holy fuck! And so he sent me that recipe. He sent me a cheesecake recipe. I've got like a handful of his recipes still in my fucking phone from him writing them out and sending them to me that I still use.
Domesticism for him was a healing mechanism. I learned this from Taco, Dan Cirillo, who's fucking was a stud of a human too. And Dan talked about like what warriors would go through coming home. And like, I'd be like, yeah, like Glen had his process and that like he did those things and like, just let him do it.
Yeah.
But he's going to cook for you and he's going to open a bottle of wine. Like Heather would come home from work as a newscaster and Glen would have an apron on, fucking towel over his arm, and he'd be in the kitchen jamming it out. And she just got those daytime experiences with him. That was just like unbelievable. Like this guy is so at odds with this career. Like this move of he's like baking me a tuna casserole.
Yeah. That's the fucking yang to his working yin, right?
You got it.
Yeah. Sorry. So the vibe was different. You had kind of a,
it was just that whole summer. We called it the summer of love. Like summer of 2012, he got in an accident. He got in a car accident. He was riding his bike home from like a yoga class, and fucking someone came up and he fucking went over the car and like it smashed him up. So technically, his deployment to Libya was supposed to be June, July, August, but he broke his hand in that car accident. So when he got hit by the car, he like literally had to fake it. So he made up a lie to his bosses, never telling them that he had broken his hand. He told them that he told them that Ben got sick. His dad was sick and he had to take care of his dad. And karmically, Glen was totally cool with that. Like, fuck his old man. Like, he got sick. That's the excuse. And I had to corroborate it just in case anyone asked any questions. And I was like, yeah, man, like whatever it takes. But in hindsight, he was supposed to be home on 9/11.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be back. He would have done a 90-day run and been home. But instead, he wore a cast all summer, and then he had to go do his shooting qualifications. And again, this is kind of an Evan Hafer from Black Rifle Coffee story. Evan was running the shooting quals in Colorado Springs or wherever they were back then, and Glen had to go do his pistol qual because you were always doing these requalifications, and he had to do it with a broken hand.
Man. And still did it. Which is pretty freaking cool. Yeah.
And then he goes and deploys over there. But right before he left, we had, very rarely would we have the talk, don't kill my fucking plants. That would happen every time. But this one was just like, it had a different feel to it. And at the last possible minute, he's like, oh, Shannon will take me to the airport. I'm good. And I'm like, are you good? Are you good? And the goodbye was different. It was fucking final. It was creepy. I couldn't put my finger on it. It was only in hindsight that I look back on it and I'm like, it's like he fucking knew.
Yeah.
It's like he knew he wasn't coming home.
Yeah.
The hugs were a little bit longer. The summer was soaked up with so much genuine good energy. The group of friends that we ran with in Encinitas that summer all reflect back on their connections to Glen, and that just like his level of caring and intensity and friendship was just on a whole different fucking level.
Did they all have that same kind of vibe, or did some of them have that vibe where they felt like the goodbye or that summer was different?
Heather did 100%. Because she'd been through at that point, 3 or 4 of his deployments. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out. I'll see you guys later. Like, don't kill my plants. Yeah. And then this one just had that, like, it just had a different feel to it. Yeah. So yeah, it was in the air. And like I've talked to like, the Mahoney and just the other guys that were there. They were all just kind of like, yeah, it's hard to put your finger on it, right? It's like this, it's a feel. He didn't say anything finite, like if I don't come back this time. There was no direct words. It was really just like a guttural feel. And I believe in those instincts. Yeah. And I knew that something felt wrong. So, fast forward to 9/11, and Glen had broken up with his girlfriend, but she was still very much in our social circle. And he like wrote me this. He always wrote emails. He was very, very good about keeping in touch. Like even when he used to go to Yemen all the time, and he'd call me from a sat phone, and I could hear the fucking prayers going on behind him. Like, Glen, what's that? He's like, I can't tell you. It's top secret, but I'm in a country that rhymes with the word lemon. So he was great. He was the guy who always kept in touch. So he had written me a note. He's like, hey, help Shannon find a new boyfriend so she gets over me. Like, like classic Glen, like just go, help her go find someone else. And then that night on 9/11, I got a text message or a note from Brandon Webb. And, Brandon was at that point he just felt like had his like fingers inside of what was happening. He's like, hey man, I got a bad feeling about this. Something's going down in Libya. I'm like, where? He's like, oh, it's in Tripoli. And then something hit the news that night, but it was like so understated, but it was like, this is kind of weird. Glen's in Libya, but this says Benghazi. Glen's in Tripoli. Oh, he's like, not anywhere near there. Cool. I kind of talked myself into it. I write him an email that night. Last email I ever wrote him. Hey man, heard there's some shit going down over there. Hope you're safe. Like, be careful. I wake up the next morning and it's on the news. Like it's, Brandon again. Yeah, man, I don't have a good feeling about this. And I'm like, well, I'm not thinking anything. I'm going to the gym. So I go to the gym and, do my workout, but I just feel a little bit fucked up. And then like this just in the air now, like everyone else had heard about it. Like, you think Glen's okay? Is everyone okay? Like
at that point, had you heard that American citizens had died?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So by the time, now it's the morning of the 12th.
Right.
Right. So which means it's the evening of the 12th. So Glen had already died hours earlier, but like due to the time changes and stuff and figuring that out from the State Department and whatnot into the CIA, like it was all just getting disseminated. So I get a phone call and it's around, it's like lunchtime or something. And it's like an 858 number, which is like a local San Diego number. And I am the guy who classically will not answer his phone if I don't know who's calling. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that and some little voice in my head said, answer that call. And so I did. And I'm driving away from the gym and like, is this Mr. Lake? Yes. We need you to return to your home in Encinitas, California immediately. And I said, okay. Hang up the phone, 10-minute drive to the house. There's 2 black SUVs parked directly in front of the house. It's right out of a fucking movie. Damn. I pull up. These guys get out of the car, and it's just like, like 4 or 5 CIA operatives, black suits, black ties, white shirt. We regret to inform you that Glen Doherty's dead. And one of the guys who was there at the house introduced himself. He said, my name is... And I'm like, that's a really unique name, and I know that name. I looked at him, and I kind of had a light moment, like classic Glen. I'm like you needed your medical qualifications about a year ago, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm the guy who mailed you your letter with your falsified documents that Glen stamped because he stole a doctor's fucking stamp signature to requalify you for your medicals. And he's like, he just, it's like we needed that light moment in the middle of this fucking horrible tragedy. And sorry, I probably just shouldn't have said that. You probably bleep out his name or something. I think he's retired now, but like, we got a little chuckle out of that. And I'm like, yeah, I was always there to help. Like Glen would call me up, be like, mail this stamp to this address. Don't ask any questions. But like when the name was so unique, I was like, oh, I remember that name. And now you're at my house telling me that my fucking brother's dead. And it was fucking surreal, but it's like, we've all been in car accidents or hopefully some people don't get in car accidents, but there's moments in a car accident that you'll get ingrained and hard coded into your brain. That moment of those black SUVs coming to the house, sitting in the back porch where Glen and I would have, countless late night conversations, and them telling me that Glen died, and they didn't have any details. They were like, Glen died of patriot. It was like really vague shit that I needed to hear whatever they could tell me. And then I was Glen's listed next of kin. That's why they were there. They normally you'd go to a parent's house or you go to a sibling's house, but Glen listed me as his next of kin, which that was Glen. Like that was our relationship. Like he wanted me to run point on that stuff. We had left our wills to each other. We had left like all of that crap to each other. Like that was by design. That was like, hey man, like I want you to take care of my stuff for me. Like, yeah, of course. Well, we're fucking immortal. We're going to live forever. So sure, you get all my debt. Yeah, no, you get all my debt. That's how he ran it, man. And then he died. And Brandon was right there. I really value that for him, Brandon Webb, to be able to come right in and in a very selfless way in those first safe couple of months, like just take care of the media side of it. Like I didn't want to be in front of this thing. I couldn't. I needed to manage hundreds and hundreds of Glen's best friends and this national tragedy. And thank God Heather was in the news, because I kind of got a gauge between her and Brandon of like, here's the news cycle. Here's what's going to happen. People are going to want to sit down with you. They're going to want to talk to you, and avoiding that. But then putting myself into like a very immediate cause of action, which was Glen died. This is a national event. You've got a job to do. Go take care of Glen's stuff. He entrusted you with his world. And I just sprung into action, which was what was needed. It was like, hey, you're going to go to Boston. The family's going to fly to Dover Air Force Base. They're going to go meet the president of the United States and receive the body. You're going to fly to Boston. there's going to be a funeral. You have to sign all the paperwork at the Costello Funeral Home in Winchester, Massachusetts. You have to receive Glen's ashes. You have to find his Form DD-214 and like, boom, just get into it, figure it out. Like, it's not like we rehearsed this. Like, I didn't know what a Form DD-214 was.
Yeah.
And I just got absolutely immersed really for what turned into like almost an 11-year journey of unfucking and figuring out the estate and Glen's legacy and everything in between, man.
Yeah. I guess the gravity of hearing you explain and walk through those moments of receiving that news, man, it's powerful.
I'm trying really hard not to let it fuck me up right now because
no, I'm right there with you. I mean, because it's a cascade. If it, the second it starts, and I'm in that same boat for sure. But I am curious, when something because of what happened, the national and I would say even worldly geopolitical implications that event had. There's way more to it than, say, if it would have been a car accident or, fucking anything else, frankly.
This, I believe truly that Benghazi, Libya, stayed in the news cycle disproportionately long for what it was for a national event. It got politicized. It was an election year. There was so many things that happened in the immediacy of Glen's death, but truly in the years that followed. Mitt Romney had met Glen. Like, we all went to a house party down in La Jolla, and Mitt Romney had just bought a house in La Jolla and like rolls in on this house party with Glen. And it was like Glen's famous politician story because Mitt Romney had been the head of the IOC in Salt Lake, Utah. He'd been the governor of Massachusetts. So we all knew who Mitt Romney was.
Yeah.
Rolls in, meets Glen, shakes his hands. Hi, I'm Mitt Romney. I just moved in down the street. Like, how's it going? And Glen's like, oh, I know who you are. Like, you were in the Salt Lake, International Olympics Committee, and you were the governor of Massachusetts. He's like, I'm from Massachusetts. They had like a 5-minute conversation. Mitt takes off. Mitt comes back around like an hour later, like making his way out of the house. Walks up to Glen, shakes his hand. Hi, I'm Mitt Romney. And Glen's like, you fucking airbag. I just met you an hour ago. It was this famous politician story. Like, Mitt didn't remember a goddamn thing out of it. He was just getting votes. He was just out locking up votes.
Oh my God. But the fact, like, to me, that says so much about, or it encapsulates so much about the kind of guy Glen was, like, because almost nobody is going to say that, like, hey, dipshit, we just met. Like, most people are just going to play it off like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. They're going to think that. They're not going to say that,
No. So here's Mitt Romney, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month after Glen died, hopping on national news at one of his stump speeches and says, I knew Glen.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Glen's name's in politics. And there was a side chosen.
Yeah.
And Mitt starts talking about what a great person he is. So then now I'm in the middle of this fucking tailspin grief cycle. Glen's mom is up in arms. Like, she is fucking furious that anyone is saying that because she's still got a very immediate need that hadn't been addressed yet, which was no one called her to say they were sorry. Like, this is a 78-year-old, 75-year-old woman at the time. Like, she just wanted someone to say they were sorry about what happened.
Yeah.
And so she's all pissed off. So I got to write a letter, an email over to Mitt Romney's campaign. And I'm like, if you guys don't want to get skewered by an old lady, I'd shut the fuck up about that one. And that was politics. But that was right in the immediate stuff, right? The other immediate stuff was celebratory. It was, celebrations of life, fancy word for a funeral party. And we threw one on the East Coast. We threw one on the West Coast. Like, we threw a hell of a party for Glen. Then there was the foundation, the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. Like, that thing was launched in Kate's basement, like Glen's little sister's basement in Marblehead, Massachusetts, right in the middle of that funeral. Like, me, her, Tommy Donahue, Charlie, like whoever else was around, like we all sat around. We're like, we got to do something. Glen's too big of a person not to keep around. And Glen struggled. Like, he really struggled with what to do next in life. Well, let's help his brothers with that struggle. Let's remove that gap in the GI Bill. Let's do scholarships. Let's help Glen pay it forward. Let's keep his memory alive. And so that was the birth of the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. So that same politics and publicity would get you an audience with Ed Markey, who's senator from Massachusetts. And then he co-signs off. Next thing you know, like 3 months later, you got your 501c3, you're up and running. And you go out and you start raising money for to celebrate Glen's life and do things we didn't know how to do. No one knew how to fucking run a foundation, but it felt right. Next thing you know, in 2013, we hear there's going to be a congressional hearing. Like Hillary Clinton's name was getting dragged through the mud. Like, you know, the optics were fucking horrible for her, and as they should have been, because there were some major issues with security, details in funding, in general protocol. And when you've got a loose cannon, like Ambassador Stevens was known to be, who is willing to put himself into a higher risk situation for the sake of nation building. I mean, he didn't do it from a bad place, but like, yeah, man, he must have made State Department personnel really nervous, because he's out trying to, like, you know, ham it up with the locals and like forge relationships. But like, dude, he never should have gone to Benghazi. It was a fucking death sentence.
Yeah.
And our government let him go. I mean, there's just such a fucking myriad of mishaps. Like,
well, and denied funding requests for extra security, you know? I mean,
well, that goes back decades.
Yeah.
I mean, to be clear, the State Department lack of defensive tools, whether they were sandbags, personnel, weaponry, cameras, you name it, that dates back several administrations. You can go all the way to Bush Sr.
Yeah, I mean, and you could say that about, you know, a lot of problems. I mean, you could use the border as an example, right? It's like, okay, but you're the fucking guy here now, so
right.
Like that's part of the deal with being in charge, is that if it's fucked up and you don't fix it, then it's your fucking problem, you know?
Whether you like it or not, you can look in the back, you know, Obama can look back at Bush Jr. and say, well, fuck, Bush Jr. had 8 years to invest in this, and he never did.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't he?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a priority. Because someone at the State Department, whoever was running the choice, was like, that's not a good budget choice. No one's going to like me for that one. Yeah. We'll just kick the can on that one down the road.
Yeah.
So it landed at Obama's feet. Oh, okay, cool. Or Hillary Clinton's feet, I guess I should say. But she didn't do anything to pick it up and be like, hey, now's the time. Like, we're fucking Democrats. We're famous for spending money. Let's go.
Yeah, no shit. I guess before you get into all, because there were so many things that happened, and I think a lot of people don't realize, which is a big part of why you're here, is talking about suing the U.S. government and everything that you had to go through to kind of right the fucking ship that is Glen's legacy. But before you get into that, what I wanted to ask was that, you know, this was a much bigger thing than it would have been if a lot of factors weren't at play. However, and I think because of that, you have kind of a certain feeling of responsibility of like, dude, I don't have time to fucking grieve. I don't have time to think about it. I don't have time to be sad to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, you know, there's waves of emotions. There's times where it is quiet. It's at night, you know, you're not on your phone and you have time to think and you're fucking crying and whatever. But by and large, it's like you get catapulted into this fucking huge responsibility and you don't really have, I'll call it, the luxury of grieving and processing a huge, momentous loss in your life the way most people have.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious, did there come a point after everything, or whether it was months or even years later, where you kind of had that opportunity to do that, or was it something that just over a decade it took and it just kind of worked itself out?
You know, it's interesting. So it came in fits and spurts. Like, my immediacy was, I have to call Glen's family. I'm now disseminating this kind of flow of information. There's a funeral and there's going to be national television there. There's going to be a Catholic mass. There's going to be fucking you and Shane and Clint and Rick and all the boys walking up to a casket and fucking punching tridents into it. There's, you know, like these very immediate things that are, again, they're ingrained in my memory, where there wasn't time to grieve. Glen had a crazy ex-girlfriend. Like, I had to like kind of like mitigate against some of that, and like, God love her, but her grief cycle was totally different than mine. And I was able to observe that, like, observe it while dealing with the very real stuff that I had to plan for, right? There was planning to do. Like, there was the immediate funeral in Winchester, Massachusetts. Then there was the celebration of life that was going to happen in Encinitas. It ended up being like this, you know, 2.5 day fucking carnival of loving Glen. It was amazing. And that took time to plan and get city permits for, and like a paddle out and all of the events that happened inside of there. it occupied a lot of my time. But during the in-betweens, on my way to bed, fucking bawling my eyes out. But then you get up and you're like, no, I got the next job to do. Like I have to secure a permission from the police to barricade off our street because we're going to have a barbecue and just invite the world who loved Glen. And I got to do that. So I don't have time to cry.
Yeah.
And cry now, think about how fucked up it felt then to lose a brother and the politics involved and all the layers of grief and loss of like, how could this guy be gone? Like, we were just getting started.
Yeah.
But it did happen that way. And then I would get this little spit of it, little shot of grief. And then it would sort of fortify me. And then I'd go to the next one. And then someone else would move into my house and have their own experience that they had to have. So then I could take care of them. You know, like I remember one of these girls who's a TV personality was like fucking hit a bottle of vodka in her backyard, came over to grieve and was like, just drank the whole fucking bottle. That was her thing that she had to do to go through a grief cycle that she was in. And she had her own demons to chase. Shane moved into the house for 3.5 months, Shane Hyatt. And
I mean, that's a thing by itself.
that is a giant thing by itself. He fucking wore a hole in her couch with that shaved head of his. It was like sandpaper going back and forth. He barely left it. I had to throw the couch away. God love him. Like that was one of the best things that could have happened, I think, for me, because he's such a strong individual that I could glean some of that Glen strength off of Shane. Yeah. Cool, man. I got a job to do. Let's go do it. Yeah. But to kind of answer your question, it took years to go into it. And like, I think grief, when you truly love someone and they're an essential part of your life and you've learned so much and you have so much appreciation for what they brought you, that there's no timeline on grief. There's no timeline on remembering someone, good, bad, indifferent. Like I'm looking right down here, this, that fucking John Deere hat that you keep there. And I remember that hat like it was, like every time he wore it, like it was yesterday. And like that's a smiling moment. Those are happy moments. There was a probably at least 2 years where there was way more sad moments than happy moments, but somewhere in there it flipped and things became more celebratory and things became a little bit more uplifting. But those were also the hardest years because like I could never have imagined being the executive of an estate, what I was going to encounter, not to segue into the US government, but like I can't imagine someone else having to go through that and deal with that. And I hope no one ever does, but they will, because that's just fucking life. And, like I had to go to war in my own way to protect Glen's legacy.
And on that, excuse me. Yeah, there we go. Throwing the BUBS cap on.
Just fortifying myself up a little bit here. That's all. Just fucking had to get her going.
Amen. So in that, what was the first encounter where you were like, wait a minute, what? And you realized that shit wasn't the way it was supposed to be, and now you have a battle on your hands with Uncle Sam.
Yeah, so Glen dies. We get through both of the celebrations of life. Like we get through Winchester, we get through the San Diego event.
Which, by the way, I still have video on my phone from Winchester of the bagpipes and the procession in the vehicles, which we'll put into the video, but still have it on my phone still, so...
Yeah, man, riding shotgun in a hearse.
Yeah.
It was fucking surreal. Like that's one of the moments of like where it's like where do you go? Like everyone's in the limousines and like, piling in to be this procession. And I'm like, I'm going to go ride with my boy.
Yeah.
And the driver for that car was definitely like, oh, fuck, this is heavy. Front row, first car, just seeing all the people, all the flags on the side of the road. Like, again, we talk about patriotism, right? Like, the town of Winchester came out to celebrate a national hero that day. But then that day ended. And then the next day comes and I'm still there and I'm going, okay, now I got to go through Glen's laptop. Glen had life insurance. I remember because I would be involved a little bit with like Glen's security qualifications and stuff. And it'd be like, Sean, I need you to be a character witness. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to have fun with this one. So what do you mean, Glen? You don't want me to tell him about that time you tried to sell cow shit as hashish during high school? No, fuck you, Sean. Don't say a word. And I always obliged. And there was just little details. There's always paperwork that he had to take care of when you're contracting directly for the CIA. One of the things he had to do is he had to have a life insurance policy for every deployment. So this was like
a separate one?
Yeah, it's a mandatory. You had a guest on Morgan. I don't remember Morgan's last name. He was a Blackwater contractor.
Yeah, right.
So really interesting guy. And at the very end, he just touched on, of his episode, he touched on the idea of the Defense Base Act. He called it the DBA. And he just sort of breezed through it. He's like, oh, if you have a contractor, you have issues with this, call me. I know how to help. And he could not be more fucking true about that statement. I mean, I hope he's got a lot of help there because it's a fucking hornet's nest. So if you're going to contract for the Central Intelligence Agency and you're going to work overseas, you have to have life insurance. It is mandated in the Defense Base Act that you have life insurance. And it's a full inside job because they also know who you're going to get the life insurance from. You're going to get it from this company called Rutherford Insurance. And it's a step-by-step process. So Glenn would get a life insurance policy. He would pay for it out of his own pocket. The policy would go live the day he left country, and it would go inactive after he got home. And it was mandated through the Defense Base Act. So Glenn would then get reimbursed for the life insurance policy after he got home. Pay a couple $1,000. I'll tack onto his paycheck a couple months later. And the gist of the life insurance policy that I found out about was that it was architected, specifically designed under the Defense Base Act, not to pay out for grievous bodily injury, death, dismemberment, etc. So think about that. It was designed not to pay. Now, not for everyone. You had to meet a very specific, narrow set of criteria in order to be qualified for that life insurance policy. You had to be married with dependents. And let that sink in for a minute. You, Mike Ritland, go overseas, serve your country as a contractor, get killed, no money. Sorry, man. That's just the way it goes. If you were married, and you had kids, yeah, no problem. Here's your $500,000. Here's your standard life insurance policy. But Glenn was not married. Glenn did not have children. I learned all of that after calling Rutherford. I got their phone number through Glenn's emails and going through his shit.
So what would constitute being paid out, or if those two boxes have to be checked, then why the necessity for the policy?
Well, the Defense Base Act is a congressional. It's an act, it's an act of Congress, and it's designed to protect U.S. interests overseas. No, it's not it wasn't designed to maliciously target single men. They just had a different standard of living back in 1942 when the shit was written. It was written during World War II, and it's archaic as all fuck. By today's standards, back then it made perfect sense, I guess. I mean, it doesn't to me, but someone wrote it into law that said, hey, in Defense Base Act, if you are a contractor for the United States government, you can be going to work for the State Department, you can be going to work, you can be an electrician, doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to work for Uncle Sam in some capacity. If you are killed overseas and you're not married with dependents, we don't value you the same way we do as a family man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to get your head around it, yet it is written into law.
Yeah.
So I encountered that by calling the insurance company, and I just assumed it would be a matter of some paperwork. Hi, this is Sean Lake. I'm the executive of Glenn's estate. I've got my power of attorney, and I've got all my legal documentation here. I'm ready to send this in. And by the way, how do I apply for Glenn's death benefit? I guess you have to apply for it. I'm learning as I go. And they're we're sorry to inform you that we will not be paying Glenn's death benefit.
What was the amount of money, if you don't mind my asking?
We're talking $550,000. This isn't life-changing money. This is your standard life insurance policy. Yeah. This isn't you get $5 million because you lay down your life for your country. This is a standard boilerplate.
Yeah, life insurance. Covers the fucking debt that you left behind, basically. I mean,
straight up.
Yeah.
With how fucked up his houses were, it probably would have exactly washed them out, or a little bit less.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, at the time, I had a job to do, right? This is the task part. This is getting my grief in little fits and spurts and being able to advance the ball. I need to sell Glenn's houses. I need to corral his bank accounts. I need to settle his investment accounts. I need to get his death benefit. That was kind of the biggest task. And I'm not getting anywhere with the CIA. I've got one email address to talk to. And the Rutherford people politely stonewall me. So about that time, now the news cycle's fucking up to here, right? Now Hillary Clinton is enemy number one, and there's a lot of stink going on. I think Obama had just recently like won the election, so he's back in for his second round. But like, you know, became a bit of a rallying call. So that was really like where I think the Republican Party or whatever politics were at stake. But there's just, the whole thing stunk. So it was just kept being in the news and it wasn't going away. Why were those Americans abandoned over there? What was going on? So while that's all happening, and I'm not involved in that news cycle yet, I'm over here talking to this insurance company, like trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. I get a phone call and it's from a group of attorneys at K&L Gates. And it's a major law firm. And they say, hey, we'd like to represent you in just managing the estate and kind of going through this process. And I was like, well, that's really, really nice of you. Like pro bono, like you just want to do the right thing. Like, fuck, that's a patriotic gesture right there. Like that's, I will take you up on that. Well, little did I know and little did they know that that would start a damn near decade-long relationship with unraveling what Glen was involved in working for the GRS and working for the CIA. And, you know, we really quickly realized like they were not going to pay this life insurance benefit. Glen's mom is up in arms. Like she goes on a news station, local Boston TV, and is like just absolutely distraught. And I've got a job to do with Barbara Doherty, and that's protect Glen's legacy. So I'm not going to let this happen. So with the help of the K&L Gates attorneys, I sued the federal government and Rutherford Insurance in federal court for Glen's death benefit and basically misrepresentation. And it's, you know, you can Google it, like Lake versus Rutherford et al., and it'll go through like the details of the lawsuit. I go to federal court in San Diego, walk into the courtroom, the representatives from Rutherford Insurance are there, the attorneys there, and I lose. I was heading out of that courtroom in 3 hours. And the lawyer for the other side barely said a word. And it's like they fucking knew. I'm just sitting across, just fucking eyeballing them, just like, you sleazy fucking motherfuckers. Like, how could you do this? And the judge was right there on my side, but she had to look at me and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Lake. Like, this is an act of Congress. Like they're acting well within their legal means. And then she proceeded to chew them out for doing the wrong thing. Like, you guys could do the right thing here. You guys could do the right thing, and you're choosing not to. And she's like, yes, I have to side with you on this dispute, but look into your, like, it was like a personal attack on their character for what they were allowing to happen. And they were just being insurance companies, man. They do it every fucking day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's that adage, there's what's right, what's wrong, and then what's legal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they did what's legal
and
what's wrong at the same time. They found a way to fucking blend them. And I was absolutely infuriated, but I took my swing at the government and I lost. And it was around that time that like there was a couple of things that were now at play. Like the Glen's Foundation was up and running. The G.D.M.F was up and running. And by the way, we absolutely love that acronym. Like, of course, Glenn, you like, this is a classic Glenism. You got to leave us with that. The Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation, the G.D.M.F. Goddamn motherfucker. Yeah. And to this day, I love wearing those hats around that just say G.D.M.F. and people be like,
like what? Why would you?
Oh, I don't want to talk to that guy. So I take my swing and I lose, and I'm angry. Like, I'm in the grief cycle of anger now. I've now learned a little bit about what happened that night. I've been to Washington, D.C. For a ceremony where like Joe Biden and John Kerry were up and talking about, you know, like what had happened. Dave Ubben, who's one of the survivors on the rooftop with Glen, was there. I got to meet him, and he was still in a wheelchair, and was like, you could tell he was healing, but had been super fucked up. And that was like my first real visual of what had happened. And, you know, it was like Joe Biden shaking hands with Barbara Doherty and finally giving the thank you and appreciation. But I had a fight that I wasn't done fighting for. So there was two parts to it for me initially, was Glen's death benefit. And then the other part of it was I felt was so fucked up. I was like, well, what's going to happen the next time this happens, man? Like, I had friends, you have friends that, you know, that still were in that line of work. And there's way more coming through that are going to do this again. Like, Glen ain't the only SEAL, the only special operator who is going to need to make that kind of money serving his country overseas, doing high danger, high speed work that's going to be put in a really harmful situation. Like, it's going to happen again. What happens to them?
Yeah.
And I wanted to future-proof this. So I kind of had this strategy that I concocted with the attorneys, which was like, hey, I want to get Glen's death benefit paid. That's job number one. Job number two is I want to future-proof this. I want to protect Glen's brothers because they're my brothers. Like, in my own way, like, these are my friends. If Shane Hyatt deploys overseas and decides to go and do contracting work and he dies, this same thing happens to him.
Yeah.
I want that money to be there and go to his brother, go to his mom, like she was alive at the time, like whatever. I don't care. Like, it's got to go somewhere and do something for good.
Yeah. Just
show the appreciation that someone laid down their life. So that was my kind of attack plan. They entered a third component into it, which was part of was connected back to G.D.M.F, which was like, well, we should also think about celebrating Glen's legacy. And it was on, a different timeline where they talked about this thing called the Congressional Gold Medal. And all of a sudden, this 3-part strategy was in play. And this is late 2014. I'd lost the lawsuit, but my next fight was to take it directly to the CIA. I was asking to get a meeting with John Brennan, the director of the CIA. It took about half a year after the lawsuit to get that meeting. And at this point, I'm going after both things. And I remember going in to the base level of the Central Intelligence Agency. You walk in the building, you take a left and a left and a left and a right or whatever. And there's this one little shitty corner on the first floor of the CIA building, which is where GRS operates. So I got to see where Glen's desk was. They all shared desks back there. And it was I got to meet a couple of the guys that Glen had deployed with. I was like, man, they really put you guys in the fucking broom closet around here.
Office space.
Oh yeah, it was full office space. So I go into a contract room and I wanted to read Glen's contract. I had versions of it from his laptop, but the real thing he couldn't take home with him. It was all classified. And I'm looking for the language that covers the life insurance policy. And I walk into this room and just the sheets of paper on there, take that sheet of paper, take a black Sharpie and fucking wipe out 95% of the words on there. That's what they handed me. Glen Doherty, signature. I could glean nothing from it. And I was so fucking mad. And they're like, we'll leave you in here as long as it takes to review this.
You're like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I got it, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.
This is the fuck you government people. You've already, you won the lawsuit in court. All I'm trying to do is help the people in that broom closet back there get what's right for them and help Glen's mom, who's at home pissed off and crying, get a little nod of appreciation for the sacrifice here. And you're giving me redacted statements. Cool. So then I go upstairs to John Brennan's office. I actually got a meeting with the director of the CIA. So here I am. My palms are fucking sweating, but I am just mad. That whole redacted thing just kind of set me off. And I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about patience. Well, this is maybe when that didn't work in my favor or did, depending on how you look at it. I walk in the room and there's a circle round table in Brennan's office and we're talking 6 lawyers. And Kate, Glen's little sister, and me are in there, and then, a lawyer on our side and 4 lawyers on their side. And I have this conversation with them and it starts off very light, oh, tell me about Glen. And I'm like, yeah, he was the most important man in the world. He is the reason that people should be fighting for what's right. And he would do that. So, we spiral into well, talk about the reason you're here today, son, or, whatever the fuck he says. And I say, well, your company is disrespecting Glen's memory. And don't tell me you don't have $500,000 sitting in a suitcase somewhere where you can't reach over there and go and do the right thing. I said, I'm here to ask you to do the right thing. And I mean, again, I was pretty fucking fired up. And if you don't do the right thing, think of how it's going to look when I'm out there talking to every media news outlet that's out there talking about how you don't honor those who've laid down their lives serving their country. Those are not light words to say to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. I get a kick under the table from Kate, knock it the fuck off. And that was it. I took my shot. And there were more words exchanged. They weren't pleasant.
How did he respond?
Stoically. So he's famous for that. I don't know this, right? I know John Brennan's name from fucking Fox News, CNN, ABC News, whatever. That's all I know. He's the director of the CIA. He's Glen's boss. He didn't know Glen. Glen didn't know him. He was just that guy. So he said one thing to me that really pissed me off at the time. But this is me not knowing politics or anything. He says, "We'll look into it." It was among the only words that he said. "We'll look into it." And in my head, I'm thinking, we'll look into it? Yeah. Is that what we're going to fucking do? Are we going to look into it? Like, oh, I was so mad. And he gets up to leave. I'm shaking. My hands are sweating. And, you know, I wasn't being rude. I was being direct. But he gets up and leaves the room. And I'm just like, as soon as it was just me, Kate, and the attorney, I remember being like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what is going on around here? And Amy Carnival, the attorney for K&L Gates, says that was a really good thing. I'm like, what was good about that? She's like, no, you don't understand. She's like, I've been in the room with John Brennan before. Most of the time he doesn't say anything. Nothing. He asked you a question. You gave your full pitch and he said, we'll look into it. That means something. And I'm like, I got to take your word for it. Like, you're the pro, I'm not. That felt very different to me. But I don't know politics. I don't know this world. Like, I don't come from this. So, okay, I studied it in college, but it was nothing like what I'm experiencing now. And we all left there, and that was really when, like, we just didn't know what could happen. Because I pitched Brennan, too, on future-proofing it. I was like, hey, man, like, you don't just pay Glen's death benefit. You got to take care of Glen's brothers moving forward. Like, you have to acknowledge that this is wrong. You got to tell these guys to fix it. And I architected this whole idea of what fixing it meant. Like, you got to have them sign an extra piece of paper that acknowledges that this life insurance policy will never pay out and they should go and get supplemental life insurance. Like, I laid all that at Brennan's feet.
I mean, why not just change
an act of Congress?
Yeah, I mean, why not just say, hey, it includes anybody. There are no stipulations. Like, why not just do that?
Let me just reference the book here real quick for that. Hold on a second. Chapter 14, Changing the Congressional Act of Congress.
Mind your own business. That's what it says.
Nah, man, it's so like that would have been the most daunting task in the world. I recognize that. I was like, you are not going to get an archaic piece of legislation written in the 1940s after I've already lost the lawsuit challenging it to come back around into Congress and get a 2/3 majority, then through the Senate, then signed into law by the president without, like, if we thought Benghazi was a big major political news cycle push, it would have had to have been a 10x that. And so I thought the best way to affect change would have been to have them, like, sign them, like, write a little something so the contractor knows, like, Mike, you know, guys that have gone overseas and deployed, and you know, these are smart guys. They wouldn't just sign up for, Glen was no dummy. You wouldn't sign up for a life insurance policy that was never going to pay out. So guys, fucking make people aware of it.
Yeah.
I learned this after Glen died. Had I known about the Defense Base Act when Glen was alive, I would have been like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you need a different life insurance policy.
Yeah.
So that was my version of fixing it. What ended up happening over the course of the next 2 years was something that I couldn't have fathomed. This is all while, you know, like, again, now the news cycle is settling down. Like, the Benghazi congressional hearings had already happened, and I get word 8 months later that the CIA was not only going to pay Glen's death benefit. They had made that commitment. They were also going to pay the death benefit back to every family affected by those same life circumstances dating back to the terror attacks in Beirut.
Oh, wow.
1984.
Do you know how many people fell into that category?
Almost 3 dozen.
Wow.
Like 3 dozen. So think about it. If let's say the number was 35, I don't know the exact number because that's all CIA secret squirrel shit. I was just told it was more than 2 dozen or 3 dozen. At $500,000 a family, John Brennan ended up shelling out probably $20-something million out of discretionary funds. And I found out about it because, like, a couple of the families, I found out about it from the attorneys, but, like, I found out about the life-changing impact of that from a couple of families that, like, they did their own investigating and figured out, like, these fucking rabble-rousers over this Glen Doherty Foundation got this to happen. So we got these thank you letters that were just fucking unbelievable.
Wow.
I mean, just like, hey, my dad died in 1990, you know, as an electrician overseas, and nothing ever happened. And then I got this check in the mail. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I was like, wow, man, like it just exceeded any expectations. And then, you know, Barbara and Glenn's brother and sister got their share of Glenn's, you know, of that death benefit. I'm like, that's what it was supposed to be. Like, that's where this is supposed to go. So that was like checking the first box. The second box got checked on behalf of all those special operators, all of those people that work for GRS and work for other branches in the CIA, whether you're an IT officer or whatever. And that was to have them take care of the death benefit should it happen again. So instead of having them sign a piece of paper that said, there's no life insurance policy, you should go get your own, they created a loophole. It's called a memo. It's an internal working document. It's basically binding internal legal rules that say if anyone dies in the future that is a 1099 contractor that falls into this gap in the Defense Base Act, we will pay their death benefit in full, no matter what. So it exceeded my expectations for future-proofing working GRS or working as a contractor for the CIA. And I got wind of that. And I actually met the attorney who wrote the memo at this, like I was at some event in Boston, and this guy walks up and we meet each other, and someone had introduced us to be like, this is the former head attorney for the Central Intelligence Agency. And he shakes my hand. He's like, I know who you are. I'm like, uh-oh. He's like, you're that guy. You stirred the pot on this. I'm like, yeah, man. I'm sorry, not sorry about that. You know, we kind of had a laughing moment. He's like, well, I just want you to know that I wrote the memo. I wrote the binding document that was signed off on protecting all of our future contracting brothers. And I want to thank you for what you did. And I was just like, whoa, I want to thank you. Like, thank you for writing it through. And he's like, it was one of the most impactful pieces of work I did under working over 10 years at the CIA.
Wow.
I was like, shit, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you ever hear back from or have any interaction with Brennan after that?
No.
That was the only.
The one and only. I have no idea what ever happened to him. He just fucking did his service. When Trump won office, obviously he was kicked to the curb. And then, you know, I don't know, he like raised his hand and got a little bit political there against Trump. And then he kind of got clipped from the scene of even having access or something. This is the last thing I read about him was in like the late, 2010s. Yeah. No idea. But I can tell you this. I mean, as contentious as that meeting was, two amazing things came out of it from the death benefit and future proofing service for your country.
Yeah. Oh, it's phenomenal, man. Keeping loose track of that, over the years, like it's just, to me, it's a testament to the friendship that you had with Glenn and the inspiration that I think he got out of everybody to impact the world for a net positive, like he just has that and continues to have that impact on people.
I mean, we're here almost 11 and a half years after he died because he mattered. Yeah. Like I do BUBS because it matters. Yeah. Like I don't, this isn't the paycheck thing. This is like, no, this feels right. Like this is legacy. This is celebrating what he stood for. And if you can inspire a few other people to level up and live a better life and be better citizens and better brothers and better sisters, man, like what better example to have?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I to me, like, I mean, it's obvious even outside of your words of saying like, I'm not doing this for the paycheck, I'm doing it for the right thing. Like, I mean, fuck, that's obvious. Like, I mean, and I don't mean that as a dig. I just mean like you go from having a high level executive, I won't say cush, but kind of cush, safe, secure job where, you're taken care of very well. And you're saying, I'm going to shit can that and start a business from scratch. Like nobody does that because there's this huge fucking payday. Like that's a ballsy fucking move, and you only do that if you believe in it, and it's one of the big reasons amongst several other ones, but that I feel so honored to be a part of your guys' story, just in terms of being sponsored, for a number of years now, and to me it's like you guys are the OG sponsor, I mean, you've been with us the longest. Yeah.
Well, shit. I mean, not to jump around in history, but like when we had the idea to start BUBS, when all that kind of gelled together and came together, you were one of the first phone calls I made. Yeah. Like, hey man, like I'm not a Navy SEAL. I'm about to put Glenn's call sign on the jar of packaging and I want to do this thing. What do you think? And you were just like Glenn would kick your ass if you don't do it. You and Shane High said the exact same thing. I'm like, all right, there you go, people. I guess I'm going to just, how much do I have in my savings account? Let's go figure this thing out.
Yeah. Well, and so with that, I mean, was there you talk about the meeting with TJ and talking with Evan in terms of the foundation. Was there an actual like catalyst or light switch moment for saying like, we're going to do this and this is what's going to happen? And how did that all pan out?
Yeah. I mean, you know, you could say like, oh, things just happen for a reason, but there was a series of things. So Evan Hafer, the founder of Black Rifle Coffee, he invited me on to be a guest on one of his podcasts. He had a few podcasts during the early years of Black Rifle. In 2016, I recorded an episode with him talking about charitable giving and the importance of the Glen Doherty Foundation. He told some old Glen stories, which were fucking awesome. And when I left that podcast, I had an idea in my head about how to institutionalize charitable giving. Now, there was no BUBS. There was no idea for a brand. I didn't know what Collagen was. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just knew that like we had a problem to solve because the fundraising cycle in a nonprofit was daunting. How do you keep people active? Like Benghazi wasn't in the news anymore. The movie 13 Hours had come and gone. Like it was in the back of my head. Early 2017, my wife buys me a jar of collagen off of Amazon. And she's, you know, my wife's 14 years younger than I am. She's like, you're not getting any younger and we're having babies. I got to preserve you in your old age. Yeah. And I mean, this is my shotgun out to the world. Like when you're in your 40s, you don't feel like you're 30 anymore. Like there is a shift in your body. It is biological. It is inarguable. You might have one unicorn out there who's like, I feel better now than I did then. And it's like, well, fuck, good for you. Yeah. But for the majority of us who still want to live our lives in a full capacity, it ain't happening. So I was 45. And, you know, at this point, you know, Glenn's been dead, you know, 5-6 years, 4 years. And I was doing a bunch of consulting work. I was, you know, just married with Heather. We had a 1-year-old, kind of in that really what's next phase. And she says, take this. It's going to help you with your crinkly knees. Like your knees just sound horrible from all the years of snowboarding. So I'm like, all right, I'll take it. What do I do with it? She's like, it's unflavored. It's heat tolerant. Just put it in your coffee. Well, I drink coffee every morning. Throw it in there, drink it. 3 weeks into taking it, I started to notice the transformation. Now, I had tried every fucking supplement under the sun over the years. Glucosamine, chondroitin for joints in my late 20s, early 30s. Glenn had me doing, yeah, exactly. Shark fin soup whenever I could get my hands on it. Used to fly to Japan just for it. It was delicious. I would have, Glenn had these mason jars on the counter, which would be like, here's your pre-workout, take this, we're going to go and do some explosive CrossFit shit. Here's your branched chain aminos, or take this. And there was always a jar of Metamucil on the end because, you know, fiber is important. And that's how I learned about nutrition. This collagen was this brand new shit. But after 3 weeks, my fingernails were growing like crazy. After a month, I needed a haircut. After 2 months, I took it every single day. My knees stopped hurting. It was a no shit moment. Like after years of knee pain, I was like, man, no, I feel really good. Like this feels great. Yeah. And it got better and better and better. So I just was like, this is a testimonial to one change in my life, adding this to my morning routine, and I feel that much fucking better. What's in this stuff, man? I was just hooked. Like as a customer, I would be like, Mike, you got to start taking collagen. It's going to change your life. Yeah. TJ, my business partner, comes over to the house and we were like kind of just moonshotting some work project. Like we're pitching some brand to go do some work together. And he's got, you know, 20 years of digital commerce background. Like he's an e-commerce guy. Like he knows Amazon storefronts, Facebook pixels, all the things. I know none of that. I'm a storyteller. You know, I do brand marketing, event activations, X Games, shit like that. And he just sees the jar of collagen on the counter and we're just talking. He's like, oh, you take that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, man. Changed my life. Like I am squatting again. I'm running faster. Like everything feels great. He's like, dude, I feel like I'm 30 years old all over again. He's like, no, that's a fast trending product on Amazon. I saw this trend report on it. We should start a company. He's only thinking, you know, kind of dollar signs, right? And I just kind of paused him. I'm like, no, that's fucking stupid. But hey, man, we're sitting here drinking coffee. So what would it look like? What would a company look like? And we both said at the exact same time, well, if we ever did start a company, if we do this, we got to do something cool for charity. So in a 5-minute conversation, we defined cool charity. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, institutionalized giving. This is exactly the kind of product that Glenn would have taken were he alive. Collagen is all about self-improvement. Glen was the ultimate example of self-improvement, reading great books, inspiring others, like physically fit, you name it. This is a tool that's going to make you better. What if we gave 10% of all profits to charitable causes, to Glen's charity? Glen was always helping others right to the very end on that fucking rooftop in Benghazi. Okay. Glen's call sign in the Navy was Bub. So we're going to call this company BUBS Naturals. Every product we make will stand for self-improvement, and we will always help others just like Glen did right to the very end. And that became our North Star in a 5-minute conversation sitting in my living room that led me to calling Shane, to calling Glen's mom. What do you guys think? It was a total unknown. I just felt so right about what the product had done for me. And up until like taking the job at Burton and DC Shoes, like I hadn't felt that way. Like you feel a certain way about certain jobs, like joining the Navy and becoming a SEAL, like fuck yeah. This was a fuck yeah moment. And it felt so right. And I remember going to Heather and I'm like, look, I'm basically going to be unemployed. I don't know how long this is going to take. I'm going to deplete our savings account and we're going to figure this out. And it was a social experiment. Like it was roll the dice, man. Does anyone care? Now, the thing about doing this and putting Glen's name in the jar was that I also had this really great North Star to guide me around quality, integrity, and then I could put my own spin on it. I could do it. I could make BUBS apparel. I could make BUBS a culture. I could remind people of what Glen stood for in a casual way. You know, I couldn't tell the story. I needed time to do that, but it just felt right, man. Like, let's just sell it one jar at a time, see if people care.
Yeah.
Here we are.
I mean, to me, it's such a cool story to hear in terms of the inception of the company, how quick it happened and how it was just kind of all these stars align in a lightning flash, and then it's off to the races. And, you know, you get the blessing from, you know, everybody that knew him and was like, yeah, man, you have to do it. I won't say it's easy to have those moments. To me, those are once in a lifetime moments. But in terms of the amount of effort, like very low amount of effort into a conversation like that. Okay, everything sounds fucking good. That's all great. Okay, now it's time to actually do it.
Yeah, that's when shit got real.
And so I would ask. I mean, having been an entrepreneur for, you know, well over a decade myself, was there a biggest challenge or a few of just the like, holy shit, unintended or unexpected kick in the nuts that you got that, you know, that were either early on or along the way, period?
Yeah, God, if you want to start a business, you have to walk into it ready to get kicked square in the nuts.
Over and over.
Over and over and over again. And it's how you pick yourself back up and keep going. And if you don't believe in what you're doing, don't do it. Get the fuck out. But if you believe in what you're doing, and I'm a big fan of the why, like I got to feel this thing. And I felt it in snowboarding. I had that passion for a culture I wanted to preserve, protect, and grow. I had it for Glen's legacy. Like it felt right. I had it for the product and the integrity of it and what it stood for and what it could do for people. I'm like, if this can help me get out of midlife in a positive way and really fucking excel athletically and embrace that side of my life, which is going to make me a better husband, a better father, I'll be better as in work because of this, I got to share this with the world.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be a secret, but like I found the secret. I fucking figured out the fountain of youth. I got to share this with people.
Yeah.
And mistakes made, right? Ran out of inventory in the first 6 months. Our business plan was on a fucking napkin. It was save enough money to buy 1 pallet of collagen, which was an order unit minimum, produce 1,000 jars from 1 pallet. Take all money from said investment and buy 2 pallets, 2 pallets to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to a truckload. That was our napkin math. We didn't have a business plan, like a real one. We had ideas and instinct and passion, and that led us through those mistakes and helped us get off the ground and get back into it. But we ran out of inventory. That's mistake number 1. You can't fucking sell it if you don't have it. Protect your trademarks, protect your marks, man. Like if you have something and it means the world to you, take the time. On one level, I'm grateful we invested in that early. It still bit us in the ass. I didn't tie it enough tightly. I relied too much on some other people. So that reliance, double check it. Just double check everyone, man. Like make sure you're really working with the best partners you can work with.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, man, but we all need a good lawyer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's not if, it's when, you know. In terms of the actual products that you guys carry and you know, the decision, I'm assuming intentional decision not to over diversify in terms of SKUs and products. Is there a train of thought, a strategy, et cetera, with carrying just a few items and kind of sticking to that, or?
Yeah. You know, go narrow and deep.
That's what she said.
You goddamn right.
Especially the narrow part.
I was going to say thick and deep. No, I mean, it was instantly we knew that collagen was the thing. Like that's what I could talk about and feel the most passionate about. The second one was MCT oil, right? Medium chain triglycerides, coconut oil, fucking coconut oil and tapioca starch. It was the simplest thing in the world, but I felt the energy and the mental focus click from that. So here I am every morning drinking a cup of coffee, and I put two things in that cup of coffee. Now, at this point, I've been doing it for a few years: collagen and MCT oil powder every single day. So I'm like, that's what I want to promote. I want to promote a lifestyle to everyone around me. If you're over the age of 25, like you need these products in your life. You're just not getting them in your diet. So the more I learned about it, the more it just reinforced that need. Well, I also wanted to do it at the absolute highest level. Like dude, there's products out there that are good because they shine a light on a category. Like Laird Superfood Creamer was like an early example of being able to do that. Like what's a super creamer? Well, I looked at that and I'm like, hey man, no disrespect, but that's low grade dog food. Like you're not giving people a true functional set of ingredients in there. Like you need a certain amount of capric acid, caprylic acid, C8s and C10s in there to really turn on the brain. I want to deliver that. Bulletproof had done a phenomenal job on it. Their only fault was that they tasted like shit. You know, like that XCT oil tastes like practically unflavored castor oil. And I'm like, no one's going to really adopt that except for like the 1%ers.
Yeah, super hardcore.
It's hardcore.
The people that are dry scooping creatine before a workout because, yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. You said dry scooping. I went here. That was weird.
College days.
Yeah, man. It's like make it taste good.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to eat that steak when it's burnt and charred and there's no salt and pepper on it. Like it's just, you'll eat it, but like it's going to suck.
Yeah.
So make it delicious, make it tasty. Or in the case of collagen, make it unflavored so that you can enjoy that cup of coffee, which is like one of God's greatest creations. Like that ritual in the morning.
Yeah. Which is also something you have added coffee and electrolyte powder.
Yeah. So narrow and deep, right? Like look at 80% of our company is collagen in the creamer, and like it will change your morning routine. So we did this big, like kind of crowd info gathering email. Like we sent it out to like tens of thousands of people. What do you want to see from us? And they came back and there was a couple of things that they wanted to see on there. And it was like, we want you to make electrolytes. Cause like we're a sport company. Like we talk about CrossFit and mountain biking and surfing and snowboarding. Like that's what we do. We live an outdoor lifestyle. We want to promote activity. We're not here to promote collagen with wafy supermodels. Like that's Vital Proteins. That's their job. Yeah. Our job is to show you what it can do for your body. Go achieve some great results. Go kick ass.
Yeah.
But when the audience spoke, we're like, oh, we can do that. We can do an all natural electrolyte. Yeah, let's check that out. So we launched Hydrate or Die. Oh, hold on, shameless plug here. It's just a water bottle with some stickers on it. But so we launched an electrolyte line, and then we got into organic coffee. And the coffee was like really a passion play. My goal for the coffee originally was I wanted Evan to make it. I wanted the guys at Black Rifle to make it. And I called them up and I'm like, hey guys, like, do you guys ever do collab coffee? And I had this whole idea about doing a roast dedicated to Glen and doing like 100% of proceeds to Glen's charity. Cause we do that every year on Veterans Day. And I was like, I ran the numbers. I'm like, if you guys did like a 10,000 bag roast, you could donate like $50,000. Like I didn't really know, but I was like, I thought that made sense. And the idea couldn't get off the ground. They just weren't receptive. I remember getting like a note back from those guys that said, or like a phone call, and they were like, when you're doing 10,000 bag minimum unit runs, give us a call. And then we can do that. And I was like, fuck. All right. Well, that's probably in like 5 years. So, all right, I guess we got to go it alone. So I set out to make coffee, and I wanted the coffee to be at the absolute highest quality. I wanted this to be Glen's coffee. So we called it BUBS Brew, and the goal was to do it at the highest level. I'm like, okay, USDA organic, fair trade certified, micro lot, single origin, like all the fucking buzzwords and bells and whistles. It
Lots
really,
of mold.
Tons of mold. Like
Extra fucking mold.
You pay extra for that. Test every single batch to be mold-free, aflatoxin-free. Yeah. Like anywhere where there's a concern on coffee, fucking clip it.
Yeah.
And roast it in micro batches, like 1,000 bags at a time. Like just keep that on a cycle so that people are always getting fresh coffee. And then I was like, well, where should the coffee come from? And I was like, I know. We're going to tie this to Glen's service. So we have 3 main roasts. The Origin, which is a Central American blend that's a tribute to the origin of Glen's journey into service when he met those SEALs down in Costa Rica. So, hey, we'll do an Origin blend. And then Glen always said his most challenging deployment ever was to Mexico. He had to go to Mexico City, like protect some U.S. assets down there. And it was just like, dude, I had to have my head on a swivel. I could never tell who the good guys were from bad, like super stressful, challenging deployment. So we do a single origin Chiapas roast that I called the Challenger. And it's a little nod to that deployment. And then Glen hunted terrorists in Africa briefly for that Charlie Ebersol show, The Wanted. So we do an Ethiopian single origin called The Wanted. And they're all just these little nuddles, subtle nods to Glen.
Yeah. If you know type things.
Yeah.
So, the coffee thing is an addendum, and I love the kind of tribute, the almost wink type tribute to Glen's blends with it, and it's fucking great coffee. I do hope that you guys make the Nespresso pods. I know that's a huge fucking lift, and believe me, I get it. Making and manufacturing products, like people are like, oh, it'd be cool if you did this. Like if you had any idea what it takes to do what you're saying, oh, it'd be cool if you did that. So nonchalant, you wouldn't even ask. So I can imagine what the answer is, but there's been times where I've used like the little foil reusable fucking tops on those and actually put the BUBS in there. It's a pain in the dick. But the 2 main staple products though are collagen and MCT oil, which I similarly take every day. I drink a cup of coffee every fucking morning, and I put those 2 products and a little bit of colostrum in there too, but without fail. And I will say, like, as a guy that's, going to be 46 next month, still doing jujitsu heavy 3-4 days a week with guys 20 years younger than me. Some of them are semi-pro athletes that compete, most weekends and, are my size or bigger, and they're fucking 25. And, I think is a testament to how good the product is, because I mean, like I didn't take it when I was 35, it didn't exist. Or
it didn't exist.
If it did, I didn't know about it.
Well, you would take Knox gelatin, right? You had
not even
Jello.
that. Yeah, like I didn't. And like I feel better now physically than I did 10 years ago. Granted, the intentionality that I have with morning routines and doing all of the things that I do, but collagen for sure, and the MCT oil is a huge fucking part of it. Are you guys going to continue to do that? Is there anything that you could add to that?
Yeah. Well, you talked about this a little bit earlier, like the idea of going narrow and deep. I want to make sure that we perfect what we have. Like there's always going to be room for new things, right? There's going to be new roasts of coffee. We're actually in the middle of reworking the whole electrolyte line right now and dialing it up. And I love that stuff, right? But first and foremost, collagen. That is what we're here to do, because that is your fountain of youth. It's like, dude, you're 46 years old. You're rolling jujitsu. You're in the gym. Like you're doing things. I guarantee there's no version of your headspace, and correct me if I'm wrong, that says, yeah, I think in 10 years I'm going to slow right the fuck down and do nothing.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like the day that I have to make that decision is the day that I skydive without a parachute, or see how fast the car will go with no seatbelt on. I mean, yeah, like I have no desire to be a part of that. It's like when I can't do the things that I enjoy doing anymore, I don't want to fucking do it.
Yes. That right there. So capturing that energy, like Glen had this old Glenism, which I always got to bring up. He had these couple of quotes, and one of his quotes was, drive it like you stole it.
Yeah.
That's a mantra for life. Yeah. Drive it like you stole it. So I look at collagen and I say, hey, I'm putting Glen's name on this jar. It better have the best amino acid profile you can get, period. it is going to change other people's life because it changed my life. Mike, it changed your life. Like it is a contributing factor in addition to your morning routine, in addition to your training and your evolution in terms of how you view the world, call it longevity. And anyone out there who's over the age of 25, like it or not, your body is not producing collagen anymore. So go put some in your body. I'm like, hey man, it'd be great if it was BUBS. That's awesome. My promise is that we're going to make the best one out there. Solubility is going to disperse right away into your liquid. It's going to have the best amino acid profile, the best flavor profile. All those boxes it's going to check. Same thing with MCT oil. The biggest miss on a functioning creamer, a functional creamer, is that it tastes like garbage. And because of that, people won't take it again. So make it delicious. It's not that hard to do. Just do it right. Yeah. And then go out and get the third party, accreditations to validate it. Because, hey, I own BUBS, right? Of course, I'm going to tell you we got the best collagen on the planet. But the fact is, we're one of the only brands on the planet that is both Whole30 approved, which is a clean eating diet, and NSF for Sport certified. And anyone listening to this will be like, what the fuck does NSF for Sport mean? Well,
not safe for work.
Not safe for work. Exactly. Don't take that shit. Yeah. It's the highest level of independent testing you can get for label integrity and quality of ingredients. Like it's the gold standard used by the U.S. Olympic teams, Major League Baseball, fucking the NFL, you name it, NHL. Like we bear that mark. I mean, we work with almost every single team in Major League Baseball, free of banned substances, dead on our label claims. Like when I say joint health, guess what? It's been tested. Yeah. When I say hair, skin, nails, muscle recovery, it's been tested. And I live by that. Like I'm not putting BUBS' name on the jar if it doesn't have all of the best shit. So narrow and deep, man, own what you want to do and do it really, really well. So then when we want to make something different, and we're going to, but it's going to be known right away that, hey, no matter what, that's going to be made with the best integrity. I know those guys. They've earned that spot.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, like the honoring of Glen and his legacy and the way he lived his life that you guys have been able to bake into BUBS as a company, as a culture, as a brand is nothing short of just fucking inspiring, man. I'm super proud of you, and I know he is too. And I just love everything that you do, and also including. A big part of why you started it, I mean, kind of the backbone of why you started it is to create, an ability to kind of continue the giving aspect, which you guys give 10% to the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So when we started the company, man, this is like fucking napkin math business shit. Like my friends from high school, like Tommy Donahue specifically was one of them. He's like, 10% of all proceeds. It was all proceeds. It was everything we do. He's like, good luck with that one. Now, I had no idea. I didn't know how to run a P&L. I didn't know a balance sheet. I didn't know any of that stuff. Well, within a year, we'd written like $50,000 worth of checks to Glen's foundation, but we couldn't afford to. I didn't realize the whole thing was like, oh no, it's actually got to be profits. Yeah. So early on, like 2019, we're like, no, we got to do 10% of profits. Well, the kicker with the company is we weren't profitable. Like we're just now starting to turn that corner. Yeah. But we've managed to donate over $250,000, mostly to Glen's foundation. So like I kind of had this thing with Glen. I'm like, I want to honor foundations and to give back for things that Glen believed in. So we're probably 90% Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation. And then there's a local foundation in San Diego called the Honor Foundation, which is also built out of the special operations community. And it's kind of like the step you take after you get your scholarship, after you finish school. And it's kind of like career guidance into entering the workforce. And then there's Protect Our Winners, which is, it's an environmental cause based on basically a bunch of ski bums that want to make sure that Mother Nature still snows out there and, hug some trees. Well, that was Glen. Glen was all in on that. So funneling money into Glen's foundation and being a part of Glen's foundation has felt more impactful than like the few years I was on the board. Like I was on the board initially and it was great and it was the right moment. But once we started BUBS, I was like, I'm going to leave the foundation and do more good from the outside in. And if I can inspire other brands to find their way to mission-driven activations, oh, fuck yeah. Yeah. Like, tell me there isn't enough money in the bottom line at PepsiCo or fucking Minute Maid or one of those brands to
Yeah.
spearhead some good charitable giving. I mean, you know that because you've woven it into your entrepreneurial journey from day one. And like that shit feels good.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and kind of similarly, it's like even having ran a number of businesses prior to starting the dog food company and knowing what it means to try to pinpoint a specific percentage of profits, and some years are better than others. And especially the first few years is the heaviest lift and the hardest to be in the black as a business owner. But doing it anyway just fucking feels good and it feels right.
It feels right. Like I would feel like a shell, like we weren't honoring what we're trying to do if we didn't find a way. So our hack, when we knew we weren't going to be profitable, we're like, no, every fucking penny has to go back into inventory. We had just started to pay employees, and it was like, we have to invest in marketing to like maintain and get new customers in, to introduce them to BUBS. I was like, well, what can we do? Like, what can we do? And Veterans Day was the idea that I had. It was like, well, let's give 100% of proceeds on Veterans Day. Like just back out the cost of shipping the product cost, but like every penny on Veterans Day.
Yeah.
And it started small, but like last Veterans Day, I wrote a check for like $21,000 to Glen's foundation from one day's worth of sales. And it's like, yes, like, no, we're not profitable, but yes, we're honoring our mission. I found a hack.
Yeah.
Sponsor Glen's road race. Like there's an epic road race in Winchester every September, Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation road race. And it's a 5K, 10K, and it's got a ruck division now.
That's cool.
And dude, it's like everyone shows up, like 1,000+ runners for this little race. Yeah. And we run right past Glen's house. There's a memorial in there. And it's like, you touch his upbringing, you touch patriotism, you touch sacrifice. And it's in an uplifting way. You put out and you give personal sacrifice. You're remembering others. I mean, in a way, it's like, it's Winchester's version of what Murph is to so many, like the classic CrossFit Murph workout.
Yeah. Which, do you have a best time for that?
I do. So I've never done Murph without the weight fast. Like I'm committed to the RX. My first Murph was in 2009 with Glen, and I think I did it in like an hour, and I've gotten my best time down to 43 minutes.
Is there a record for that?
Oh yeah, dude. Like the CrossFit super athletes are doing it in probably like 25 minutes. Like they're just beasts. Like it's absolutely like next level. It doesn't even make sense. I am in a bracket. I do Murph every year in about 45 minutes. Yeah. Like 43 is my best, 45. This year, I was a little bit slower, 47, but I'm always in the same couple of minute range, and that's it, man.
As long as you can keep it under your age in minutes, right?
Yeah.
You'd be all right.
Yeah. That works in my favor for now.
Yeah, for now. No, I mean, that's a fucking respectable time. There's no two ways about it. I mean, that workout is a nut kicker, man. It's fucking miserable. But, phenomenal stuff. If you could, can you do a 30-second elevator pitch on the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation and what the gist of it is? Yeah.
So you get out of the military, you're a special operator or you're a family member of a special operator, and you qualify for the GI Bill. Okay. Well, guess what? That might cover 85% of your tuition. So let's say you're a fucking high-speed operator and you want to go to UCLA and go to graduate school. Well, you're going to get 2/3, 3/4, 80% of that tuition covered, and you're left holding the bag. So what are the chances you got that money lying around after a 20-year career, even 10-year career? Pick your poison in the U.S. Navy.
I'm going to say 0, because with that reenlistment bonus, you bought a Rolex and took the old lady to fucking Costa Rica. That's why. So you're going to have nothing saved up.
Yeah, you can't cash those checks. Yeah. Those are investments in happiness, but can't take it with you. So fill gaps in the GI Bill. So the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation was kicked off to solve the problem that Glen could never solve for. What's next in life? And the most logical way to do that was self-improvement, which is go back to school, figure out your skill set, apply it. So what are we doing? We're removing obstacles to that transition to civilian life. And that transition to civilian life, like I've watched Glen's brothers go through it. Some do it well. Like I think you did it well. I think Clint did it well. I think Shane's done it in a completely
in his own way, but still did it well.
Yeah. But he's healthy and happy and living the life he wants to live, right? Yeah. Tommy Barker, like these guys, Jason Errett, like phenomenal people that I've gotten to know over the decades that have all done it well. But then there's the ones that didn't.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, there's suicide rates. There's so many different things that happen alongside of it. And like, hey man, play a role in removing those barriers. So that's the Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation in a nutshell. We wanted a recreationalism side to it. We wanted one for fucking off and having fun. It was too hard to justify that and make sense of it. So scholarships just got honed in. I mean, they've issued over 50 scholarships so far. And this doesn't pay for everything.
Yeah. You
still need other forms of help, but hey man, it's one extra step in the way.
No, for sure. I mean, it's amazing to see the growth that's taken place since its inception. In the same vein of honoring Glenn and his legacy, the Congressional Gold Medal is finally coming up, right?
Yeah. So when I talked about the 3-part attack of like, you know, Glenn's legacy, get the death benefit paid, help Glenn's future brothers out with their contracting work. The third component in that was kicked off like, you know, 2014, 2015 was trying to get the Congressional Gold Medal awarded to Glenn and the other 3 Americans that were killed over there. That was like least important until we solved for job 1 and job 2. Get job 1 and job 2 done. But job 3, man, once we've accomplished job 1 and job 2, that would be amazing. It's the highest civilian honor, arguably, that you can get from the U.S. government. Like it's the Medal of Honor effectively for civilians. And let's go after that and get it awarded for all 4 Americans that were killed. So Sean Smith, Ambassador Stevens, Tyrone Woods, Glen Doherty. And it was like 3 trips to Congress, writing endless letters. And we went through 3 different Congresses because, you know, like Congress turns over. Every time it turns over, you got to start over again. And we got this initial wave of interest. And this is an apolitical gesture. This is like honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. But hey, man, it's Washington and there's politics. So it stalled out in the first Congress. Trump wasn't interested in it in the second one, or there was some just sort of internal jockeying where people couldn't quite come together. And then in that third Congress in 2022, it was like we were exhausted. It had been almost 10 years of fighting for this thing. And everyone agreed. This is the same lawyers, Dennis Potter and Amy Carnival from K&L Gates and Kate and myself, and we all kind of huddled up. And Kate was done, and the lawyers were kind of like, I think this is our last push. So they went into 2022 with like a bunch of energy to like get all the right signatures in place. And we got right to the end of that congressional setting. So it was almost Thanksgiving, and we did a huddle up. And I had flown back to DC and like done a round to like shake hands and try and convince congressmen and senators to sign on. And you can be like, why wouldn't you? Like, what do you have to lose about this one? But some just didn't. They just don't do that. Like they just don't sign on to these pieces. And I remember like huddling up, and they had this strategy call, and they're like, okay, so here's the deal. There's these 4 U.S. senators that haven't signed on yet. We need like 7 total, but if these guys sign on, then other people sign on. And one of them was like Senator Kennedy from like South Carolina. And they're like, who do you know? And one of the other ones was Bernie Sanders, and senator from Vermont. And I remember like, Kennedy, like, let me ask a couple questions. Like, I know some people in D.C., and it turns out one of the kids who went through SEAL Fit from Mark Devine that I knew, his girlfriend was like the PA to Senator Kennedy. So I put the whole piece of legislation in front of him and her so that she could slot it in there and kind of backdoor it. And he knew of Glenn's legacy and story. And then I used to work at Burton Snowboards. They're based in Burlington, Vermont. And one of the guys I worked with was Bernie Sanders' godson.
Oh, shit.
And we kept in touch. Like we knew each other. His name's Dave Driscoll. And I got to give him a huge fucking shout out because, you know, Dave's mom's married to Bernie, and Dave never made a big deal of it. No one ever talked about it, but that's his family. Like for all intents and purposes, his old man's Bernie. So I called him up out of the blue, and I'm like, hey man, are you having dinner with the old man on Thanksgiving? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I got a favor to ask. I mean, I never ask you for anything, but I'm asking you now. I need you to put this legislation in front of Bernie Sanders and get him to sign off on this. And this is how important this is. And he didn't hesitate. Dave's like, I got you. And he brought it up, did it on Thanksgiving, called me on Monday afterwards, and he's like, it's done.
Man.
So I get a call from the attorneys, and they're like, how in the world did you get Bernie Sanders, who's famous for not signing pieces of legislation like this, how did you get him to sign on to this bill? And I'm like, Don't worry about it.
I'll look into it.
I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And Bernie signed it, and the domino effect just went boom, 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 boom. Between him and Kennedy, and Kennedy was a Republican, Sanders is independent.
Kennedy?
Yeah. And they all signed on to it, and the next thing you know, it had that ripple effect.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, you can affect change. You can do it. If you don't call, if you don't take the shot, guess what? You're never going to hit, right? Yeah. That's the whole deal. And it was the last shot. Yeah. So I took it. Bernie signed it. And right on Christmas Eve, or the date, a couple days before Christmas, Biden signed it into law. And now here we are in 2024, a year and a half later, and I just saw the little mock-ups of what the awards can look like. Glenn's got a big old goofy grin, and it's a medal. It's a physical medal that'll be hung in the CIA building, as I understand it, in their history museum. Yeah. And there'll be an award ceremony later this year, and it's the culmination of this three-pronged attack or plan to, do the right thing. And shit, man, here we are, and it's happening.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Do you know what the date is yet?
No, they said from once the art's approved, it can be half a year or something. So I'm guessing probably right around Christmas again, maybe a little bit earlier in the fall.
And is that a closed ceremony, or can people attend it?
As I understand it, it's a public ceremony. So my intention is the second we get a date, I am shotgunning this thing out to the world. I mean, it might be, aside from smaller, intimate gatherings, this is our chance to celebrate Bub, to celebrate Tyrone, to celebrate what they stood for. Yeah. And I'm not missing a beat on that one. Yeah. I'm going to fucking blow that thing up as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, 1,000% will be there. If it's allowed, But
well, even if it's not allowed,
maybe I'll show up anyway. Maybe I'll parachute in.
Don't forget the parachute, though.
Well, maybe. Depends on how my joints are feeling.
That's true.
We've got some Patreon questions that I want to kind of rapid fire at you here, because there's kind of a number of them.
Uh-oh.
M. Bush Vols says, wants to know the most challenging part of establishing the business. By the way, their collagen keeps my 58-year-old knees running, so a huge thanks.
Yeah, man, first off, that's proof in the pudding. That's the shit that keeps me coming back to do this again, is knowing that I'm helping a 58-year-old stay in the fight.
Well, so same here, in that, if you think about it, so this is a tier 3 Patreon member, big supporter of the show. He took it because he heard me talk about it on the show, and is like, dude, this stuff is fucking amazing. To me, that's such a win across the board,
Yeah. So I said kind of our jokingly internal rule number 1, don't run out of inventory.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to do inventory planning. We didn't know how to map that out. And we sold more than we thought we would. And we lost tons of customers because of it. Test your ingredients. So early on, we did the NSF for Sport certification, but we didn't need it for the creamer. And, we end up having a batch that had dairy in it. And it's supposed to be a non-dairy creamer. I got nothing against dairy, just it wasn't by design. We wanted to hit a broad audience, and we're like, well, if it's vegan, we can hit, that's what MCT oil is. It doesn't have cow in it. That was the design. So test your product, because we found dairy in it, and it almost bankrupted us. Wow. It damn near, we barely got out alive on that one. And, whatever you're doing, test it. Just make sure you got the right stuff. That's why we approach the coffee the way we do. And now we NSF and test everything. It's no, that's going to a lab. I am not going to accidentally fucking poison someone with dairy if they've got a dairy allergen and I put vegan on the label. That's on me. Yeah. So test your shit.
Yeah. What's the one thing that you wish more people knew about the company? This is from Gretchen.
I think it's probably that mantra, die young as late as possible.
Yeah.
We kind of have drive it like you stole it and die young as late as possible. And those little nuances that look at living a healthy lifestyle doesn't have to be fucking boring.
Yeah.
The whole point is to get out and do great things and have cool adventures. That could be running your first 5K, or it could be summiting Mount Everest. I don't care. Just go do something awesome and be empowered to do it. I think in today's messaging and social media, it's hard to get that across. And so we just try and inspire and show people doing some fun stuff, and hopefully that gets you a little bit fired up to do it yourself.
Fucking A. Do you have a favorite BUBS Naturals product?
Hands down. If I had to pick one and I was like, hey, you're on a desert island, it's collagen.
Yeah.
Collagen is the glue holding your body together. It is my anti-aging weapon, period.
Yeah, period.
Everything else is a great plus up, but if I only got one, that's it.
Yeah. Amen. Gretchen, this is one of the funnier questions I've gotten from anybody. Why does BUBS Collagen not taste like licking a cow's ass? How does Mike know what a cow's ass tastes like? Reference Mic Drop episode number 12. That's our secret, Gretchen. I thought we knew that. I'll let you explain to how you get it to not taste like anything.
No problem. So that's the circle of trust there. I've heard from friends that their collagen experience was like cow jizz. So flipping it to the asshole side is that's different for me. Not having tongue punched a cow in the ass myself. Allegedly. So this is all part of the sourcing thing. This is that North Star we talked about earlier. Like, I want to put the best quality product in the world that is trusted by the United States Olympics, is trusted by Major League Baseball. But I also know that if Gretchen tastes it and it tastes like a cow's asshole, she's never going to buy it again. She'll buy it once because like, oh, cool story about Glenn, or 10% of profits to charity. That's cool. But if it doesn't work for her, dude, it's in the garbage. So sourcing, where are you getting your shit from? We buy from one source. We've only bought from one source, and my intention is never to buy from another source. Northern Uruguay, southern Brazil is all pasture-fed grassland. Like, cows live and die on the grass there. So they're not getting artificial hormones. They're not getting like different injections. They're not getting grain-fed like lives. They're getting natural lives. And that and the refinement, like the process of creating collagen, it's basically ground up cowhide. That scraping, that enzyme bath that goes through, it's a very clean process coming from a clean source. So it all starts with where the cows are from in those conditions. Yeah. So you won't see me doing like, oh yeah, that collagen source from China or Turkey or different areas. Like, you just got to go in and weave it. And like, you know, we sniff and test. And like, I've tried a bunch of other brands and products, and I'm like, no, this is the one. Yeah. This is the cleanest one. How can we make it better? Yeah. And so that's just always striving for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. Garrett Klein wants to know, what's the most impactful moment Glenn had on your life during his time here? And he wants both of us to answer.
Wow. There's too many to choose from. In an overarching way, Glenn always taught me to level up. He brought out the best in everyone around him. I mean, it was amazing and obnoxious at the same time, because like, you just couldn't half-ass it around him. He just pulled that out of you. And, you know, I think Glenn really turning my attention around fitness was probably a pinnacle moment, but inside of using fitness was like integrity. Like, how do you move well? How do you not cheat your reps and rounds? How do you get the most out of an experience? He laid the foundation for honorable living in the simplest moments. Like, here's how you do a real pull-up. And this is why you do a real pull-up. This is why you don't half-ass it. This is why when you do a push-up, you lock out your arms to full extension. You don't cheat. Even though we always said, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. He just leveled you up. So I'll use fitness as an example, but it was really a gateway into what kind of integrity are you going to live with your life?
Yeah. Amen. For me, the first thing is kind of similarly, like it's impossible to pick one because there's so many, and they were all kind of that benchmark moment. Having said that, there was a time which I shared on your show recently where I ate a bad batch of clams from Long John Silver's at like 9:30 in Vegas on the way home. And by the time I got home, I realized that they were bad. But
it took the whole 5-hour drive.
It did, actually. I mean, I didn't even think about it until I started having that twisty feeling in your gut where you're like, something's not fucking quite right. And then it just got worse and worse. But that's the sickest I've been ever in my life, and by quite a bit. I honestly, I felt like I was going to die, and it was for like 5 days. And I was living in Brandon Webb's guest house, which was in his backyard. It didn't have a kitchen. It was just a tiny little small fucking bedroom with a bathroom.
Can we call it a shed?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much was a finished shed. And so, you know, I was I was there solo, and I was so fucked up. Like, it took everything I had just to make it to crawl, like fall out of bed and crawl to the bathroom to throw up in the toilet, and it was those type of vomiting sessions that just keep going to the point where like your stomach starts to like have contractions and fucking knot up, and you know, like where you get cramps.
Yeah,
in
the bile there is like.
Well, no, I mean like my stomach was convulsing so hard that my abdomen was actually cramping to a painful degree because I was heaving so hard for so long. And it was so exhausting, and I was so dehydrated that like I would just lay there crumpled up next to the toilet for like 2 hours, you know, or however long, until I could half-ass crawl back to bed. And I just went back and forth, not drinking anything, not eating anything. He came to check on me, and this is during the week, you know, and it was in the college area, which is like an hour from where we worked. So he would come there first thing in the morning and give me an IV and check on me, go to work all day, come home, do the same thing. He did that twice a day for like 5 days straight. Nobody told him to do it. Nobody asked him to do it. Like, he just heard that I was sick and wasn't coming in, and he came and checked on me and fucking hooked me up. I mean, honest to God, like, I don't know that I would have fucking survived had he not done it, because I couldn't drink anything, you know.
Yeah.
And it was 5 days of it, you know. So for me, it just, you know, again, it's one story of so many that I have that, you know, really exemplified the kind of man that Glen was. But more than that, you know, it really, I think, shines a light on the impact that when somebody does things like that or makes you feel a certain way, because of the selfless act of care or service that they provide to you, I think is life-changing, you know, and it makes you realize that doing something like that for somebody can be life-changing. And I think more than anything is that inspired me, and it inspired so many people that he was a part of their life to be that same way for other people, and even as many people as they could, because it was that impactful. Yeah. And that's just the kind of guy he was.
I mean, that example of selflessness, like, and showing up, like Glen showed up, he was there, and he would be there. Like, you're in need. Yeah. I always tell the moving story, right? Like, hey, you got to move some furniture, and he'd be like, hey man, you get the pizza and the beer, I'll show up. Like, no one wants to move your friends. Like, no one wants to deal with that shit. Yeah. Glen was there, and he inspired others to be that way too. It's like, hey, you're in need, I got you. Yeah. And like, you know, Glen, he had this funny way of inspiring you and teaching you to level up. And it could be the moving furniture thing. Like, I would go with him. I didn't want to go. Yeah. I'm fucking grumpy about him, chirping and all that shit. And he would too, but he'd do it. Yeah. And that like level of dedication is what would lead him. Like, he didn't have a choice. Like, he had to go check on you. Like, he was wired that way to care about his friends. And I've taken that inspiration. I mean, I recently had a friend in Utah, like one of our old snowboard buddies, go through a really hard time. And I told Heather, I said, I got to go check on him, and I got to go, I need to do this. And she doesn't question that at all, but she knows I'm leaving her with the kids. Like, I'm leaving her to fend for herself. And I'm like, I'll be back quick, but I got to go do this. Like, this is, I can't not do it. Yeah. Right. And that's partly already in me, but it's partly taught, part of that behavior. It's like, when do you drop everything and show up for your friends? Yeah.
Well, and you know, to be clear, like, he lived in Coronado at the time. So he was, you know, driving 2 hours plus the 30 minutes that it took to force feed me a fucking IV or two twice a day. Yeah. For 5 days straight, on top of having to go be a SEAL corpsman all day. You know, like, to say that was an inconvenience is a woeful understatement.
Woeful. You know? He gave you 10 hours of his life to give you your life back.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, to me, the fact that you and I are sitting here right now, to me, should tell anybody listening that never had the pleasure of knowing Glen, just how special he was. Because, you know, how many other people would inspire, you know, two of his friends to sit here this many years later and do an entire episode to talk about him? Yeah. Like, fucking nobody, you know?
That's that magic fucking power. Yeah. Best friend to hundreds and hundreds of people. You don't just get that title. You don't get the title, oh, he was the Facebook before Facebook. Like, he earned that in all of his actions and that dedicated, consistent effort. And then he taught that out to those around him. Like, he taught me how to say I love you. Yeah. Like there are people in my life that I genuinely love. How many of them do I say it to? Not enough. I'm a grown ass man. I love people that have inspired me and helped me level up and that I can hopefully help one day. Like I will love investing time and talking to you about your adventures, your ventures, your world. And I don't take it for granted. It's not just some fucking lip service. Like we were talking about earlier, like those interviews that just go way too short and skim the surface. Like if you're going to spend the time with someone, if you're going to spend the time with humans and human connection, make it count. Our society needs that now more than ever. We need social connection, authenticity behind that. And the people that you get inspired by are going to help drive that forward. Glen led that example. Yeah. He helped you out. He helped me out countless times. Yeah. I was lucky enough to help him out a few times. You know, like there were some dark times in his life where I could be there for him. And where'd I learn that from? Oh, the guy who helped me out before then. Yeah. I'm not just paying him back so I can get it off my back. It's like, no, man, like you're just wired that way. Like I had to fly to Utah to help a friend. Yeah. And even if whether I could or couldn't, if I didn't put in the effort, fucking fuck me. Shame on me. Yeah. So yeah, you don't have a choice in it. Yeah.
He was just that kind of guy. And, we could spend, the rest of our lives talking about him, and we will.
Yeah. And hopefully inspiring others along the way. Like get them to like, hey, think past yourself. Yeah. Forget that scroll on social media and like all the negative shit that's out there. Like what can you do to make it better? Yeah. Hey man, you got a job to do. Go make it a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to bring up or mention about Glen before we give you your parting gift here that I'm excited to give you?
Oh, I didn't even know there was a gift. No, like we spend a lot of time telling Glen stories. Like I've got so many funny stories, like the hitchhiking to Alaska, and like there's so many fun things that we did that were all part of this building up in this narrative. And again, we all have a choice when someone's gone, when they're not with us. How do we want to live? How do we want our lives to look? And whether it's your play at legacy or what it is, you got one shot at doing this right. Go do it right. You're going to trip. You're going to fall. You're going to fuck it up. I fuck it up all the time. Get back up, put your best foot forward, keep it going. And if you're Glen, hey man, have some fun along the way, because it ain't worth doing if you can't laugh along the way. I mean, let's not lose track of the fun shit. Like you don't say shit like drive it like you stole it, and die young as late as possible without having some sporty fun with that.
Yeah, no shit. I couldn't have said it better myself. And again, I just want to thank you for coming and sharing Glen's story and being able to kind of understand his path and his journey vicariously through you is a really special thing to be able to do. And I appreciate you allowing me to do it.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. In this black box, I want to take a moment. Both of those are for you. The coin on top is pretty self-explanatory. But before you open the box, I want to take a quick second to thank John Johnston out in California, who he designed this buckle. He paid for it, and had a few of them made for some specific people to be able to remember Glen and just have a memento, both to remember him and for being on the show talking about him. So thank you, John. Thank you to Champion Choice Silver for making it, and feel free to open it up.
Yeah, man. Wow. All right, well, I'm being selfish here. Hold on, let me flip this thing around.
Yeah, so the next time you're wearing your shit kickers, you can bust out the Glen Doherty buckle, which again memorializes him and being on the show, and we just appreciate you coming and sharing his story. So it's a token or a gesture of spending the time on the show, and we just appreciate it.
Dude, this is absolutely freaking amazing.
Yeah,
man. Thank you. This is next level. This is going on the next Boots in the Park proudly. Yeah, shit awesome. Kickers are coming on for that one, and this thing is going with it.
That's good stuff,
man. I hope you got one for yourself.
I do. Yep.
All right. So I had no idea.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you again for coming, man. I appreciate it.
This is awesome. Boy, my gift of ground up cowhide feels kind of pale in comparison.
It's that we all have our things that we're good at, and that believe it or not, the the ability to still be able to move without fucking feeling crippled is a pretty big deal. So I appreciate everything you guys do and continue to do, especially in his name and honor. So thank you. Licking a cow's ass or not, but
yeah, front side
Amen.
of the cow.
Amen.
Cow jizz, cow's ass.
Yeah.
Amen. Whatever works.
Whatever
Makes you feel good, right?
Yeah.
Can move well.
Yeah.
Well.
Thank you again for the listeners. I hope you enjoyed getting to hear about Glen through the eyes of Sean, having grown up with him, and all the hard work that he's done since Glen's passing to be able to make it right on so many different levels on behalf of Glen. So if you didn't enjoy it, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.